YouTube. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever, wherever you are. I hope this finds you well. I am always still getting ready for the show. Oh, God. My stand. I need it to turn this way now, please, without being all twisted up. Just a metaphor for my life as it is lived. Boom, 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 boom. There's a non-zero chance that you can't hear me because I still have my headphone on. Because I am technically still having a conversation. Yep, tell me your story, buddy. You're good. Tell me your story, pal. You're not a bad man. You're a good Mr. S. Tell me about your night while I get set up and wait on people to show up to me. That's what this space is for. I don't like that. Parachute pants. You're a silly boy. Oh, God. All right. All right. I got the damn blanket mostly out of the way. Work with me. Work with me. That's how sex is not supposed to go. All right. Well, now that we've crossed the 2-minute mark and I've broken my own rule, this morning, we're going to be reading the Mabinogion. So thank you, future audience, for looking the other way while I break the state the premise rule. I started too early, right? We're going to be reading the Mabinogion. I'm going to be reading from the translation from Lady Charlotte Guest. I believe this was translated. I do not have to believe. I know this was transcribed from the 1849 edition of the text. And the transcription was by David Price. This is definitely in the public domain, the work that I'm going to be reading. And I would like, as always, to begin on the introduction. I would like to know what Lady Guest had to say to us. So we're just going to jump right in, because she's going to tell you what this book is for me. That's why we read the introductions. Reading now from Lady Guest. Whilst engaged on the translations contained in these volumes and on the notes appended to the various tales, I have found myself led unavoidably into a much more extensive course of reading than I had originally contemplated, and one which in great measure bears directly upon the earlier medieval romance. Before commencing these labors, I was aware generally that there existed a connection, good morning, Rachel, between the Welsh Mabinogion and the romance of the continent. But as I advanced, I became better acquainted with the closeness and extent of that connection, its history, and the proofs by which it is supported. At the same time, indeed, I became aware and still strongly feel that it is one thing to collect facts and quite another to classify and draw from them their legitimate conclusions. Does everyone understand that sentence? Because that's an awesome sentence. I would like to read it again. At the same time, Lady Guest says, indeed, I became aware and still strongly feel that it is one thing to collect facts and quite another to classify and draw from them their legitimate conclusions. And though, she continues, I am loath that what has been collected with some pains should be entirely thrown away. It is unwillingly and with diffidence that I trespass beyond the acknowledged province of a translator. Her commas there are all fucked up. Just commas where they just don't need to be. But, you know, whatever. Not everybody can be amazing with commas. In the 12th and 13th century, there arose into general notoriety in Europe, no necessary, just comma's not necessary there, darling, a body of romance. No comma is necessary there. No comma is necessary there as well. Which in various forms retained its popularity till the Reformation. In it, the plot, the incidents, the characters were almost wholly those of chivalry, that bond which united the warriors of France, Spain, and Italy. Hello, Corey. With those of pure Teutonic descent, and embraced Teutonic being Germanic, and embraced more or less firmly all the nations of Europe, excepting only the Slavonic races, not yet risen to power, and the Celts, who had fallen from it. It is not difficult to account for this latter omission. The Celts, driven from the plains into the mountains and islands, preserved their liberty and hated their oppressors with fierce and not causeless hatred. A proud and free people, isolated both in country and in language, were not likely to adopt customs which implied brotherhood with their foes. Such being the case, it is remarkable that when the chief romances are examined, the names of many of the heroes and their scenes of action are found to be Celtic, and those of persons and places famous in the tradition of Wales and Brittany. Of this, the romances of Owen and Gawain, Sir Percival de Gal, Eric and Enide, Mort d'Arthur, Sir Lancelot, Sir Tristan. I realized that I never did finish reading for you Tristan and Isolde, so we might revisit that too. The Graal, etc., may be cited as examples. In some cases, a tendency to triads and other matters of internal evidence point in the same direction. It may seem difficult to account for this, although the ancient dominion of the Celts over Europe is not without enduring evidence in the names of the mountains and streams, the great features of a country, yet the loss of their prior language by the great mass of the Celtic nations in southern Europe, if indeed their successors in territory be at all of their blood, prevents us from clearly seeing and makes us wonder how stories originally embodied in the Celtic dialects of Great Britain and France could so influence the literature of nations to whom the Celtic languages were utterly unknown. Do you understand what she's saying in this paragraph? She's using 19th century language. Do you understand what she's saying? She's saying that the Celtic people used to live on this landmass. People continued to live on that landmass, and they continued to use Celtic names for the landmass. In the 19th century, the Celts were thought to be a catch-all name for the people of the landmass, not an actual blood group, not an actual genetic, language family group of people who identified as different from the people outside. And what she's saying is that they absolutely were an insular group of people, because we know their descendants were pushed up into mountains and their languages didn't change, and they didn't adopt the cultures of the people around them, but the people around them adopted their stories, that they had stories about characters with the same names and the same events in the same places. So these people left, but even if the people who replaced them, whether by blood or by culture, they still had the names and the events of people who no longer lived in the landmass. And this is in the 19th century, the 1840s, 1850s, right? This is before we had modern science. I'm reading this the way I'm reading it, and I'm telling you about it now in large part because all these things that I'm constantly talking to you about the churn of post-Roman Europe remains. It remains today. All of this wacky bullshit that's going on in Europe right now with their electorate and with their wars are about these stories and where they came from today. Still, the English crown today still makes Wales and Cornwall, where these stories originated, it makes those people second class, and in the case of the Cornish, third class citizens by law, because the English crown owns these stories. And so they're able to keep the cultures in the mountains and in the marshes and in the lowlands and in the places that don't grow food by owning the cultural copyright on these stories and maintaining it in violence. And that's what Lady Guest is talking about in this paragraph. She continues, whence then came these internal marks and these proper names of persons and places, the features of a story usually of earliest date and least likely to change? That question remains. Putin is attacking Ukraine because Ukraine has the archaeological, they have the grave sites of the earliest people who spoke a language in the Indo-European language family. Russian and English, and French, Roman and Spanish and Italian, Greek, Turkish, Ukrainian. They all speak Indo-European languages, okay? And since the 1850s, right? Before then, since Ivan the Terrible, Russia has been saying, we are not a backwater frozen shithole. With no evidence to back that up. None whatsoever. And so the question that she's saying, who the fuck were the Celts? And how far back can we go in the historical record and find their actual stories with their actual names and their actual dates and their actual events and the things they actually believed with the same kind of empathy and historicity that we use when we do biblical criticism, biblical scholarly works. When we read the Bible, we go, who were these people? She's saying, who were the Celts? Who were they really? Not what does Ivan the Terrible want you to believe, not what does the throne of England want you to believe, not what do the thrones of Spain and Portugal want you to believe. Who were they really? That's what she wanted to know. And so she's saying she went into this, reading this Mabinogion. I had a hair on my tongue. I got it in one try. Look at that. I am just so good at like everything I really put my mind to. But anyway, she's saying that, I forgot exactly what I was saying that she's saying here. And so we'll just move on. Because I'll remember it, because she's building an argument to introduce why these books are important. Oh, she went into these books with a question, and she was taught a skill set that reinformed her worldview. So that's called, she's saying that the Mabinogion is like the biblical canon, Theopneustos. That's the argument that she's making. She continues. The romances were found in, oops, I hit the wrong button there. I fucked up. These romances were found in England, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and even Iceland as early as the beginning of the 13th and end of the 12th century. So that means as early as the 1200s and the end of the 1100s. I'm pretty sure that the printing press was in the 1500s. That's a fairly large land masses for these stories to all be in. Even though Europe is nowhere near as big as the United States. If you had these texts on the east and west coast of the US unchanged, you would know that you have somebody in the middle who's transmitting them, right? She doesn't have anybody in the middle, the Teutonic peoples. She said they show up in Germany, but like she said, the Teutonic and the Slavic peoples, Central and Eastern Germany, don't have these stories. Not until later. So who are these people? Why do they share stories? Why do they share land masses with the same names? It's a relevant question in 1850. And it's a question without an answer today. It's a question without an answer today. That wars are fought over. The Germans, she says, Lady Guest, who propagated them through the nations of the north, that is Scandinavia, derived them certainly from France. Robert Wace published his Anglo-Norman romance of the Brut d'Angleterre about 1155. Sir Tristan was written in French prose in 1170, and the Chevalier au Lion, Chevalier de l'Épée, and Sir Lancelot du Lac in metrical French by Christian de Troyes before 1200. From these facts, it is to be argued that the further back these romances are traced, the more clearly does it appear that they spread over the continent from the northwest of France. Normandy and Brittany, and southern England is where she's describing. So Wales, Normandy, and Brittany. The older versions, she continues, it may be remarked, are far more simple than the later corruptions. The older versions are simpler than the later versions. She calls them corruptions. In them, there is less allusion to the habits and usages of chivalry. They don't have to explain it to their audience like I'm talking to you when I read the Bible, for example. You've never seen that video. I need to put it up on the Patreon. I fucked it up real bad, and so I'm going to reference it a lot. And no one's going to have heard what I said, so I got to fix that today. Somebody remind me of that when I get to Panera, please. I got to put that on the Patreon or nobody's ever going to hear the argument, and I'm going to reference it forever. Okay, so the way it works, what she's saying, and what I'm always talking about when you're reading these books, is the way it works is if the author has to explain it to you in the text, one of two things has happened. A later redactor or a later editor has come in and gone, I like this old story, but my audience isn't going to understand it. Parenthetical right here. That's what that means. Or it means that it's a completely new creation in a time, talking back about a time that people don't understand. So they have to spend more time in the book explaining why these people are the way they are, because they're different from you, even though they live in the same place, and their heroes have names you recognize. That's what she's explaining here. I talk about this all the time. Okay, so she says, in the older stories, there are fewer allusions to the habits and usages of chivalry. So what that means is that in the older stories, the behavior that they're doing does not need an explanation, because everyone who's going to hear the story implicitly understands why the characters are doing what they're doing. You don't have to explain why Aladdin is stealing at the beginning of the movie. Everyone can understand that. Everyone can understand, oh. And then the song kind of does do the parenthetical if you need it, right? So the songs over top of what you're seeing are the voice, the Greek chorus explaining to you what you're seeing. But you don't really need it. The song also serves the goal of giving you pathos for this character and demonstrating his ethos. That means it gives you an emotional connection to him, and it allows you to see how he's going to behave throughout this story. Good stories, the first 2 minutes, are a shortcut for what's going to be happening later. Like when we were playing Final Fantasy VI, and I told you, oh, I can't wait for this fight. When you go to rescue Terra at the beginning, I'm not spoiling anything, watch it. And you break up into the 3 groups, and you get the Moogles, and I said, this is so great, this is so great. The first real fight you get in this game, the first real thing you get to do is the coolest thing you're going to do, and you're going to do it a lot in this game, but not enough. And it's cool. But they give it to you right at the beginning. They're showing you what you're going to be doing in this game that's different from the others right at the beginning. That's good writing. Good pacing and good writing. Back to hers. She's a good writer. I'm loving this. So she says that there are fewer allusions to the habits and usages of chivalry, and continues, and the Welsh names and elements stand out in stronger relief. And so what she means is, if you understand like a bas-relief carving, right? These old names, the Welsh names, stand out among all these French and English names. What the fuck are all these French and English names doing around this big-ass Welsh name, right? It's like, what the hell are English people doing being named Jacob or Joshua, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Elijah? What the fuck are these white people doing with these names? Where the fuck did these names come from, you might ask? Because a good English name is Ilfric. She continues, it's a great step to be able to trace the stocks of these romances back to Wace, or to his country and age. For Wace's work was not original. He himself. She says it's a great step. Like, I'm always talking about how science or whatever criticism I'm talking about is a good first step. She's saying it's a good first step to acknowledge that Wace is the earliest. It's a good first step to acknowledge his book, or his country, or his age. And Wace's work, but it's only the first step because it was not original. It didn't begin with him, right? He had influences. This is why I'm always talking about obvious visual influences. In the 90s, we were taught to either ignore the influences or deny that people were influenced. Because if you watch The Matrix and you deny that it's influenced by Gnostic Christianity, then you don't have to ask whether it's Theonostos and it's trying to infect you with worldview. You can just go, oh, her pussy looks nice in those leather pants, and you can move on with your life. I tell you what, Arter, I'll tell you the secret to how I get my hair to look like this for $1,500. I'll take that cash. Continuing. He himself, this Wace, was a native of Jersey, which is, I believe, in southern Brittany, southern England, right? Appears to have derived much of it from the Historia Brittonum of Griffith ab Arthur, commonly known as Geoffrey of Monmouth, born 1128. I did not know that Geoffrey of Monmouth's name was Griffith ab Arthur. I didn't know that he was originally born a Welshman. So, his name is Griffith, which kind of means griffin, but Griffith ab Arthur, son of Arthur. So his family line is keeping that name Arthur. So if he's going to hold up that Arthur used to be king of the land, Geoffrey of Monmouth has more goals going on than what historians will tell you Geoffrey of Monmouth's goals are. He's propping up a family legend. I didn't know that. That's why we read this stuff, especially the older stuff, because what remains a mystery and what has been ignored in the interval stands out in stark relief. Anyway, Geoffrey of Monmouth, born Griffith ab Arthur, was born 1128. Himself possessed, she says that Wace was deprived much of his work from Historia Brittonum, the Historia Brittonum of Geoffrey of Monmouth, who himself claims, professes to have translated from a British original. So Geoffrey of Monmouth claims with his work that he's translating his entire work from an original in the Welsh language. So as I say, he's holding up a family history and saying, this is our family history that I'm just translating from the Welsh into the English language. That's what Geoffrey of Monmouth did in 1128. It is, however, very possible that Wace may have had access, like Geoffrey, to independent sources of information. Of course it is. She continues, to the claims set up on behalf of Wace and Geoffrey to be regarded as the channels by which the Cymric, that is Welsh, tales passed into the continental romance may be added those of a third, almost contemporary author. Layman, a Saxon priest dwelling about 1200 upon the banks of the Upper Severn, acknowledges for the source of his British history the English Bede, the Latin Alban, and the French Wace. The last name, however, is by very much his chief and, for Welsh matters, his only avowed authority. His book, nevertheless, contains a number of names and stories relating to Wales, of which no traces appear in Wace, or indeed in Geoffrey, but which he was certainly in a very favorable position to obtain for himself. Layman, therefore, not only confirms Geoffrey in some points, but it is clear that, professing to follow Wace, he had independent access to the great body of Welsh literature then current. What she is saying, whether you want to memorize these names or not, she's speaking to people who know these names and bandy these names about because they're their influences. What she's saying is that in the 12th century, by 1150, this scholarship was already hot. It had already been going long enough that you have several independent authors who have collected libraries. This was already hot. By 1150, she continues, Sir F. Madden has put this matter very clearly in his recent editions of Layman. The Abbé de la Rue also was of opinion that Gaimard, an Anglo-Norman in the reign of Stephen, usually regarded as a translator of Geoffrey of Monmouth, had access to a Welsh independent authority. The point here is that there was a library of Welsh literary materials that no longer survives. That's the point that she's trying to make. I'm going to move on from that because I don't need, for you, don't need the literary transmission. Okay. These are the books that she's combining to make the Mabinogion, as she's calling it, as this has been published. The more strictly romantic literature of Wales has been less fortunate, though not less deserving, of critical attention. Small portions only of it have hitherto appeared in print, the remainder being still hidden in the obscurity of ancient manuscripts, that is, in the 1850s. It had been obscured. I don't know whether it still is. Of these obscured manuscripts, the chief is supposed to be the Red Book of Hengist, now in the Library of Library of Jesus College, Oxford, and of the 14th century. 14th century is pretty late. This contains, besides poems, the prose romances known as Mabinogion, the Black Book of Caermarthen, preserved at Hengwrt, and considered not to be of later date than the 12th century, is said to contain poems only. The Mabinogion, however, though thus early recorded in the Welsh tongue, are in their existing form by no means wholly Welsh. They are of two tolerably distinct classes. Of these, the older contains few allusions to Norman customs, manners, arts, arms, and luxuries. Norman being Norman French, right? The people who crossed the Channel to conquer England later, not Nordic. They are, the other of the two tolerably distinct classes, and less ancient of the two, are full of such allusions and of ecclesiastical terms. Both classes, no doubt, are equally of Welsh root, but the former are not more overlaid or corrupted than might have been expected from the communication that so early took place between the Normans and the Welsh. There was communication happening because they weren't a distinct people. She didn't know that at the time. Whereas the latter probably migrated from Wales and were brought back and retranslated after an absence of centuries, with a load of Norman additions. Killich and Owen and the Dream of Rhonaby, that actually is probably Rhonaboo, might be cited as examples of the older and purer class, the later of the Fountain Peredur and Garan de Urban of the later or decorated. I don't speak Welsh. I tried to learn how to read it, and I don't remember, frankly. Besides these, indeed, there are a few tales of Amlin and Amic Sir Bevis of Hampton, the Seven Wise Masters, and the story of Charlemagne, so obviously of foreign extraction and of late introduction into Wales, not presenting even a Welsh name or allusion, and of such very slender intrinsic merit that although comprised in the don't know how to pronounce that. It's Llyvr Coke. They have not a shadow of claim to form part of the canon of Welsh romance. The LL is not pronounced or like it's not pronounced like Spanish, French, or English. So that name Llewellyn, definitely not pronounced Llewellyn. Therefore, she continues, although I have translated and examined them, I have given them no place in these volumes. There is one argument in favor of the high antiquity in Wales of many of the Mabinogion, which deserves to be mentioned here. This argument is founded on the topography of the country. It is found that Saxon names of places are very frequently definitions of the nature of the locality to which they are attached, like Angle. We're going to skip down there. Conclusions just drawn. We're going to move past that. We're just going to leave. You now know that this is a collection of old Welsh books, all right? I'm going to read her conclusions. It was with a general belief in some of these conclusions that I commenced my labors, and I end them with my impressions strongly confirmed. The subject is one not unworthy of the talents of Lewid or a Pritchard. It might, I think, be shown by pursuing the inquiry that the Cymric nation is not only, as Dr. Pritchard has proved it to be, an early offshoot of the Indo-European family and a people of unmixed descent, but that when driven out of their conquests by the later nations, the names and exploits of their heroes and the compositions of their bards spread far and wide among the invaders, and affected intimately their tastes and literature for many centuries, and that is strong claims to be considered the cradle of European romance. The point, and what you need to know as we read these, we need to be culturally sensitive in 2026. And what you need to know is that for centuries, going on a millennium, the Welsh people have been accused of being Semitic, of not speaking the same language family, and as such, being subject to all of the same torments that the other Semitic religion and family group that you are aware of in Europe, the Jewish people, had to suffer. The Cymry language, and that includes Irish and Scottish, was treated with all of the rules of anti-Semitism. That's why Ireland, the Irish allying with the Nazis, is so stunning historically. Because they'd been treated like a Semitic people. Anti-Semitism means everyone of that language family. Everyone. And what she is saying is that in 1850, there is no evidence that Welsh is a Semitic language. People genuinely believe today, if you're a Mormon today, your faith requires you to believe that Welsh and the Native American languages are Semitic, that they're related to Hebrew. They're not. But the reason you're required to believe that is because people believed wacky and evil shit in the 19th century. And what she's saying is that the Welsh people are not Semitic. The Welsh are not Jewish. And they are not subject to the hate with which you throw at Jewish people and other Semitic people, because they're your fucking cousins. So even your own rules break apart with the way you treat them. English crown, English people. You want to talk to me about racism? You want to talk to me about racism? I'm pretty sure the word Wales, means fucking slave. It means other. It means people that are subject to being treated like shit. And then don't even get started with the fucking Cornish people. They're not even recognized as a people group in England. The UK, you need to sit the fuck down if you want to talk to me about racism. Especially if your ass lives in London. So anyway, we're going to read this story called The Lady of the Fountain. And it goes a little bit like this. King Arthur was at Caerleon upon Usk, and one day he sat in his chamber, and with him were Owen, the son of Urien. Hey, Rachel, Owen is spelled O-W-A-Y, or A-I-N, just like Cayenne's son. Anyway, were Owen, the son of Urien, and Kinnan, the son of Clydno, and Kai, the son of Keener, and Gwenhwyvar and her handmaidens at needlework by the window. And if it should be said that there was a porter at Arthur's palace, there was none. Glewided and Gavelwar was there. This is not the correct pronunciations of their names. Acting as porter to welcome guests and strangers, and to receive them with honor, and to inform them of the manners and customs of the court, and to direct those who came to the hall or to the presence chamber, and those who came to take up their lodging. So if you've ever watched anything, a period piece set in the very early medieval, whenever somebody would walk into the hall, the king is sitting in his hall, this noise, it's a very loud chamber. A porter is the person that when they walk in, you see it in really bad comedies where they'll blow the trumpet, that stupid long stylized trumpet that has no place being in the early medieval. They go, "Hark! Sir Dickhead has entered the room." And then everybody goes, "Hey, Sir Dickhead." And then he goes, "Hey, and this is the particular rule set with which we engage." And then he goes in and he now knows the particular social custom with which these people engage. That's what a porter is. In the center of the chamber, King Arthur sat upon a seat of golden rushes, over which was spread a covering of flame-colored satin, and a cushion of red satin was under his elbow. Then Arthur spoke. "If I thought you would not disparage me," said he, "I would sleep while I wait for my repast. And you entertain one another with relating tales, and can obtain a flagon of mead and some meat from Kai." And the king went to sleep. And Kynon, the son of Clydno, asked Kai for that which Arthur had promised them. "I too will have the good tale which he promised me," said Kai. "Nay," answered Kynon, "fairer will it be for thee to fulfill Arthur's behest in the first place, and then he will tell thee the best tale that we know." So Kai went to the kitchen and to the mead cellar, and returned bearing a flagon of mead and a golden goblet and a handful of skewers, upon which were broiled collops of meat. Then they ate the collops and began to drink the mead. "Now," said Kai, "it is time for you to give me my story." "Kynon," said Owen, "do thou pay to Kai the tale that is his due?" "Truly," said Kynon, thou art older, and art a better teller of tales, and hast seen more marvelous things than I. Do thou therefore pay Kai his tale. "Begin thyself," quoth Owen, "with the best that thou knowest." "I will do so," answered Kynon. I was the only son of my mother and father, and I was exceedingly aspiring, and my daring was very great," says Kynon. "I thought there was no enterprise in the world too mighty for me, and after I had achieved all the adventures that were in my own country, I equipped myself, and set forth to journey through deserts and distant regions, and at length it chanced that I came to the fairest valley in the world, wherein were trees of equal growth. And a river ran through the valley, and a path was by the side of the river, and I followed the path until midday, and continued my journey along the remainder of the valley until the evening. And at the extremity of a plain I came to a large and lustrous castle, at the foot of which was a torrent, a waterfall. And I approached the castle, and there I beheld two youths with yellow, curling hair, each with a frontlet of gold upon his head." I was going to say, a youth means a male and a maiden means a female. Both of these are virgins. That's what these words mean in their language. Each with a frontlet of gold upon his head. That's it's a circlet, right? With the little, you've seen those. Basically, it's what we kind of think of as like a tiara, right? He's got like the gold frontlet on his circlet. "And clad in a garment of yellow satin, and they had gold clasps upon their insteps." That's, I guess, the inside of their feet. The clasps of their shoes were made of gold. "In the hand of each of them was an ivory bow, strung with the sinews of the stag, and their arrows had shafts of the bone and the whale, and were winged with peacock's feathers." And so understand that they're not ivory tusks. It's not an ivory great bow. He's describing a compound bow made with ivory. He's describing a compound bow. Okay? These are complex, very high technology weapons these boys are holding in the context of this story. Sorry. I went to the wrong paragraph. I'm never going to find the sentence I'm looking for in the paragraph. So their arrow shafts are made of whalebone, and they're winged with peacock's feathers, right? The shafts also had golden heads. So like you can kind of think of this as these boys have stuff made with very high technology materials from very far away, right? If you think about it being in Wales, right? Wales doesn't really have whales, but Scotland and Scandinavia do, and Iceland will, right? Wales might have whales, but you understand what I'm saying. The interior of the UK doesn't have whalebone materials, right? And certainly peacocks from India, right? That's not native to where this guy is. And so what he's saying is these boys are they're dressed in extremely expensive stuff, and I am suddenly very far away from home, right? In Wales. The shafts of their arrows also had golden heads, and they had daggers with blades of gold, and with hilts of the bone of the whale, and they were shooting their daggers. What that means is that they had their daggers set up, and they were shooting the blade of the dagger. And a little way away from them, I saw a man in the prime of life, with his beard newly shorn, clad in a robe and a mantle of yellow satin. And round the top of his mantle was a band of lace, probably shooting the dagger. This is a game that we don't actually know what it was, but it was probably like horseshoes. You're probably trying to see how close to the dagger you can shoot without hitting the hilt or the blade of the dagger. You don't want to ruin the dagger. You don't want to ruin your arrowheads. So you're probably just seeing, you probably like got it up in a tree, and you're probably seeing how close you can get, or you're like trying to shoot it into the hilt or something like that. You got it in the ground, and you're probably playing like horseshoes or like lawn darts with a dagger that's whatever 50 yards away. They're boys, right? They're playing a boys game, and so that they wouldn't want to damage either their arrows or their daggers. So you're probably not actually shooting the dagger itself. This isn't trick shooting. They're boys. Anyway, he continues. And a little way away from them I saw a man in the prime of life, with his beard newly shorn, clad in a robe and a mantle of yellow satin. And around the top of this mantle was a band of gold lace. On his feet were shoes of variegated leather, fastened by 2 bosses of gold. When I saw him, I went towards him and saluted him. And such was his courtesy that he no sooner received my greeting than he returned it. And he went with me toward the castle. Now there were no dwellers in the castle except those who were in one hall. And you understand that what they didn't do is go, hey bro, that his greeting was, hello, I am the speaker of this story, whose name I Shaggy Philolitea, have already forgotten. Hello, I am Dick Nuts McGee. I am walking this way, and I have a sword, and I'm wearing armor, and yeah, I've definitely got a horse behind me. I might even be riding it. Hello, this is why I'm in your country. I am not a threat to you. And the guy received his greeting with a, hello, I am Dick Bag Stevens. I live here. These are my boys. My sex things that I don't do sex with because they're clearly angels or whatever. They're clearly supernatural beings. But that would be what you would expect of this setup if you're coming here in 900 AD. This is my castle. And then when he says, that's received his greeting, when he says returned it, he goes, would you like to come inside for lunch? And so they go inside for lunch. They don't need all this dialogue, right? The guy speaking is already in a dialogue. You understand? This is already in an oral performance, and the oral performance is giving an oral performance. So he doesn't need to give all of this. He's trying to get to the story. Anyway. Now there were no dwellers in the castle, continues our storyteller, except those who were in one hall. And there I saw 24 damsels embroidering satin at a window. And this I tell thee, Kai, that the least fair of them was fairer than the fairest maid thou hast ever beheld. and the island of Britain, and the least lovely of them was more lovely than Guinevere, the wife of Arthur, when she has appeared loveliest at the offering on the day of the Nativity or at the feast of Easter. And do you understand the difference that he's making here? The difference in fair and lovely? The difference is whether she's a virgin or not. Fair is what you look like before you have sex muscles, and lovely is what you look like when you know how to look good for the bedchamber. It's the difference in a virgin and a prostitute, right? The virgin and a wife. Like, it's the difference. We should know the difference, and we should absolutely stop dressing our pre-sexual, preteen daughters like they're post-sexual wives. It's unhealthy to everyone. They didn't. Anyway. They rose up, everyone in the place, rose up at my coming, the women, and 6 of them took my horse, which was implicit, and divested me of my armor, which was implicit. And 6 others took my arms, which are my weapons, which are implicit, and washed them in a vessel until they were perfectly bright. And the third 6 spread cloth upon the tables and prepared meat. And the fourth 6 took off my soiled garments and placed others upon me, namely, an undervest and a doublet of fine linen, and a robe and a surcoat, and a mantle of yellow satin, with a broad gold band upon my mantle. And they placed cushions both beneath and around me. If you knew what implicit meant, I would care what you think. With coverings of red linen, and I sat down. Now the 6 maidens who had taken my horse unharnessed him, as well as if they had been the best squires in the island of Britain. Then, behold, they brought bowls of silver wherein was water to wash, and towels of linen, some green and some white, and I washed. And in a little while the man sat down to the table, and I sat next to him, and below me sat all the maidens, except those who waited on us. And the table was of silver, and the cloths upon the table were of linen. And no vessel was served upon the table that was not either of gold or of silver or of buffalo horn. And so you understand that the custom here is that he and the lord of the house sit at chairs at this table, but the women sit on the floor. That's the custom. And our meat was brought to us. And verily, Kai, I saw there every sort of meat and every sort of liquor that I have ever seen elsewhere. But the meat and the liquor were better served there than I have ever seen them in any other place. Until the repast was half over, neither the man nor any one of the damsels spoke a single word to me. But when the man perceived that it would be more agreeable to me to converse than to eat any more, he began to inquire of me who I was. I said I was glad to find that there was someone who would discourse with me, and that it was not considered so great a crime at that court for people to hold converse together. Chieftain, said the man, we would have talked to thee sooner, but we feared to disturb thee during thy repast. Now, however, we will discourse. And what he's saying is that it's not the custom everywhere to talk while you eat. And this guy, when he started eating, the lord of this castle didn't know whether it was the custom of this guy's land to eat in silence, and so he just waited for that guy to break the silence. Because some people like to eat in silence. I found eating at Christ's table extremely difficult because people wanted to fucking talk to me, and it's like, let me eat, and then you can fucking talk to me all you want. But while I'm eating, let me fucking eat. I don't want to talk, I want to eat. Then, continues our speaker, I told the man who I was and what was the cause of my journey, and said that I was seeking whether any one was superior to me, or whether I could gain the mastery of, or I could gain the mastery over all. And what he's saying, and then I told him who I was. He gave him his name. The cause of his journey is now what he's giving him. He's giving him his ambitions. He's saying, this is my dad, and these are my uncles, and these are the people that you might know that know me, that I know, and this is what I'm trying to do relative to those people, right? He goes deeper into his backstory after the meal is over, right? That's what discourse is. If you want to know somebody's backstory, feed them. Don't just ask. Asking is so fucking rude. And if they don't volunteer it, they don't want to talk about it. Anyway, this is what he said of the cause of his journey. I said that I was seeking whether anyone was superior to me, or whether I could gain the mastery over all. And what he's saying is I was looking for someone who could beat me in a fight and that I could serve as a vassal lord, or whether I was the rightful king of the world. We've seen this in Gilgamesh, by the way. And you've seen it if you've watched my shorts. The man looked upon me, and he smiled and said, if I did not fear to distress thee too much, I would show thee that which thou seekest. I'll challenge you to a fight. Upon this I became anxious, says our speaker, and sorrowful. I might die. And when the man perceived it, he said, if thou wouldst rather that I should show thee thy disadvantage than thine advantage, I will do so. Sleep here tonight, and in the morning arise early, and take the road upwards through the valley until thou reachest the wood through which thou came hither. A little way within the wood thou wilt meet with a road branching off to the right, by which thou must proceed, until thou comest to a large sheltered glade with a mound in the center. And and thou wilt see a black man of great stature on the top of the mound. He is not smaller in size than 2 of the men of this world. He has but 1 foot and 1 eye in the middle of his forehead, and he has a club of iron. And it is certain that there are no 2 men in the world who would not find their burden in that club. And he is not a comely man, that is, he's not a good-looking man. But on the contrary, he is exceedingly ill-favored, and he is the woodward of that wood. It means he's ugly. And thou wilt see 1,000 wild animals gazing around him. 1,000 was the word that they used at that time to mean infinite, uncountable. Inquire of him the way out of the glade, and he will reply to thee briefly, and will point out the road by which thou shalt find that which thou art in quest of. So think about this in terms of like Final Fantasy, right? Okay, so you've come here. Now go back the way you've come, but turn down this road that you couldn't see when you were coming here. You can only see it when you're leaving here. And you're going to find a glade, and in that glade you're going to find an ogre, and that ogre's only got 1 leg, so it's going to seem like he doesn't want to fight you. But he's got a great big fucking hammer, and he's twice as tall as you are. So ostensibly has twice as long a reach as you do with this great big fucking stick that he's got. He will kill you, so tread lightly. Also, you're going to see all of the animals in the universe out there, more animals than you can count. You're going to be like, why the hell are there so many animals in this glade? So don't freak out. But go talk to that guy, and he'll tell you whether you're the king of the world. He'll tell you. And long that night seemed to me, said our speaker. And the next morning I arose and equipped myself and mounted my horse and proceeded straight through the valley to the wood. And you notice that the difference in this and Final Fantasy, for example, and this is why I get so frustrated with modern fantasy, is the feminists were right. Okay, the world-ending cataclysmic threat, it doesn't drive everyone to want to play these RPGs. Can we not do something that's a little closer to home, a little closer to reality, a little closer to my character's lived interests? Can I not? And the answer is no, you can't. No, they're not going to give you anything but boring side quests. And I go, have they never read a good story? Because you could just send me into a magical wood with a bunch of animals around it and a big fucking guy with a hammer in the middle. I'd play that game, where that kind of shit just keeps happening. Anyway. And long seemed that night to me, said our speaker. And the next morning I arose and equipped myself and mounted my horse and proceeded straight through the valley to the wood. And I followed the crossroad which the man had pointed out to me, till at length I arrived at the glade. And there was I 3 times more astonished. 3 times. He was 3 times more astonished. You know, people, this, if you know, you might even know the bit that I'm thinking. Uh, well, he was beat half to death. Well, how do you know it was half to death? How do you know it was 3 times? People say, well, I was twice as surprised as I thought I was going to be. And he goes, bro, I was 3 times as surprised as I was going to be. You want to get idiomatic, brother? I was shocked. Sorry. I was 3 times more astonished at the number of wild animals that I beheld than the man had said I should be. It's funny to me. And the black man was there, sitting upon the top of the mound. And you need to not be thinking about this like an African man. You could be. He could be an African man who's just twice as big, but you really want to think of him as a guy who's just like black. He's just like black pigmented. Sitting on the top of the mound. And you got to remember that mounds to these people were like the mounds that I was talking about Putin wanting to get from Ukraine. These are burial sites for important people. Important Indo-European people, actually. The mound burial thing, that's why Mormonism wants the native North Americans to be Indo-European or Semitic, because the mound burial thing, we thought for a long time was only an Indo-European thing. It's not. It's not only. Obviously, I'm in Ohio where Serpent Mound is, and that was not built by Indo-Europeans. Sorry. He's sitting on the top of this burial mound. That's old, maybe older than time. Huge of stature, as the man had told me that he was. I found him to exceed by far the description he had given me of him. As for the iron club, which the man had told me was a burden for 2 men, I am certain, Kai, that it would be a heavy weight for 4 warriors to lift. And this was in the black man's hand. And he only spoke to me in answer to my questions. He has nothing to offer you. No hospitality. No kindness. He is rude. And in order to engage with him, you have to be rude, is what he's explaining to Kai here, our speaker. Then I, said our Kai, our speaker, asked him what power he held over those animals. I will show thee, little man, said he. And he took his club in his hand. And with it he struck a stag a great blow, so that he brayed vehemently, and at his braying the animals came together, as numerous as the stars in the sky, so that it was difficult for me to find room in the glade to stand among them. There were serpents and dragons and divers sorts of animals. A dragon is a large lizard to these people, not a winged-dingy thing like you think of. And he looked at them and bade them go and feed, and they bowed their heads and did him homage as vassals to their lord. Then the black man said to me, Seest thou now, little man, what power I hold over these animals? Then I inquired of him the way, and he became very rough in his manner to me. However, he asked me whether I would go, and when I told him who I was and what I sought, he directed me. Take, said he, that path that leads toward the head of the glade, and ascend the wooded steep until thou comest to its summit. And there thou wilt find an open space like to a large valley, and in the midst of it a tall tree, whose branches are greener than the greenest pine trees. Under this tree is a fountain, and by the side of the fountain a marble slab, and on the marble slab a silver bowl, attached by a chain of silver, so that it may not be carried away, like a pin at a bank. Take the bowl, and throw a bowlful of water upon the slab, and thou wilt hear a mighty peal of thunder, so that thou wilt think that heaven and earth are trembling with its fury. It makes me laugh when we get to this part. I'm sorry, if you want me to read that sentence over again, ask at the whenever. But it always makes me laugh, because we have the sites today. We have the altars, right? We can go and find them, the ones that haven't been destroyed. We see examples of this behavior where there's this altar and it's like all decorated and it's all beautiful. And we know that it used to have like silver inlay and stuff. And we're like, how did it not get robbed? And the answer is that, like, well, the things that were easy to take away were chained down. So when you talk about, oh, you're going to steal anything that's not bolted to the floor, that was a real practice. Bolting things to stone in the floor so that people wouldn't steal them, because the honor system only worked for people who had honor. That's why it was a system, and that's why there was a grading system. That's why you could accrue honor, because people would see you not steal shit that wasn't bolted down. Like, this is why the Elder Scroll games are actually fun. It's like the ability and the urge to steal everything in the universe was fucking real back then. How easy it would have been. How easy it would have been to just pick up that pot and get it warm enough that it wasn't that pot anymore and then sell it, is why it had to be chained to the altar. Because you couldn't pay someone equal to or greater than in strength, our guy here, our knight errant, you couldn't pay a knight fixed. You understood? You understand? This temple, this site that this guy is sending us to, these supernatural creatures that he's going to go engage with, they can't pay a human to stand there, right? And whatever magical practice that made the Knight of the Last Crusade, that movie that made him able to stand there as a ghost, it also made him completely inept to defend that stuff with violence, right? Making an immortal guy who can stand there and defend it with violence, that's only going to work for about 15, maybe 20 years. And that's how are you going to get humans to sacrifice to stand there and keep other humans from coming over here and stealing this pot? How are you going to keep the second one to not just go, you know what, fuck it, I'm taking the pot? You didn't. The answer is you didn't. You just chained the fucking pot there and hoped nobody came with a good saw and just took the fucking pot. That's what you did. That's what actually happened. Continuing. We have the sites. We don't have the pots. She said, he continues, under this tree is a fountain, and by the side of the fountain is a marble slab, and on the marble slab a silver bowl. I've been calling it a pot because I've been thinking in terms of a cauldron, but it's a bowl, right? Think a drinking bowl. Have you ever seen a cup bowl, like a drinking bowl? Think that. Attached by a chain of silver so that it may not be carried away. The chain is also silver, though. So someone eventually just came by. Between this story being told and us finding a site like that, someone just went, yeah, and stole the whole apparatus. You understand what I'm saying? Take the bowl, says this giant black man, and throw a bowl full of water upon the slab, and thou wilt hear a mighty peal of thunder, so that thou wilt think that heaven and earth are trembling with its fury. With the thunder there will come a shower so severe that it will be scarce possible for thee to endure it and live. And the shower will be of hailstones, and after the shower the weather will become fair, and every leaf that was upon the tree will have been carried away by the shower. Then a flight of birds will come and alight upon the tree, and in thine own country thou didst never hear a strain so sweet as that which they will sing. And at the moment thou art most delighted with the song of the birds, thou wilt hear a murmuring and a complaining coming towards thee along the valley, and thou wilt see a knight upon a coal-black horse, clothed in black velvet, and with a pennon of black linen upon his lance, and he will ride unto thee to encounter thee with the utmost speed. If thou fleest from him, he will overtake thee, and if thou abidest there, as sure as thou art a mounted knight, he will leave thee on foot. And if thou dost not find trouble in that adventure, thou needst not seek it during the rest of thy life. So I journeyed on until I reached the summit of the steep, and there I found everything as the black man had described it to me. And I went up to the tree, and beneath it I saw the fountain, and by its side the marble slab, and the silver bowl fastened by the chain. Then I took the bowl and cast a bowl full of water upon the slab, and thereupon, behold, the thunder came, much more violent than the black man had led me to expect. And after the thunder came the shower, and of a truth I tell thee, Kai, that there is neither man nor beast that can endure that shower and live. For not one of those hailstones would be stopped, either by the flesh or by the skin, until it had reached the bone. I turned my horse's flank toward the shower, and I placed the beak of my shield over his head and neck, while I held the upper part of it over my own head, and thus I withstood the shower. When I looked on the tree, there was not a single leaf upon it. And then the sky became clear, and with that, behold, the birds lighted upon the tree and sang. And truly, Kai, I never heard any melody equal to that, either before nor since. And when I was most charmed with listening to the birds, lo, a murmuring voice was heard through the valley, approaching me and saying, O night, what has brought thee hither? What evil have I done to thee, that thou shouldst act towards me and my possessions as thou hast this day? Dost thou not know that the shower today is left in my dominions, neither man nor beast alive that was exposed to it? And thereupon, behold, a knight on a black horse appeared, clothed in jet black velvet, and with a tabard of black linen about him. And we charged each other. And, as on the onset was furious, it was not long before I was overthrown. Then the knight passed the shaft of his lance through the bridle rein of my horse, and rode off with the two horses, leaving me where I was. And he did not even bestow so much notice upon me as to imprison me, nor did he despoil me of my arms. So I returned along the road by which I had come. And when I reached the glade where the black man was, I confess to thee, Kai, it is a marvel that I did not melt down into a liquid pool, through the shame that I felt at the black man's derision. And that night I came to the same castle where I had spent the night preceding, and I was more agreeably entertained that night than I had been the night before, and I was better feasted, and I conversed freely with the inmates of the castle, and none of them alluded to my expedition to the fountain, neither did I mention it to any, and I remained there that night. When I arose on the morrow, I found ready saddled a dark bay palfrey, with nostrils as red as scarlet, and after putting on my armor and leaving there my blessing, I returned to my own court. And that horse I still possess, and he is in my stable yonder, and I declare that I would not part with him for the best palfrey in the island of Britain. Okay, so that's not the end of the story. But I want to pause here because this is why I don't mind game overs. This is why I don't mind a wipe. This is why I don't mind, like, when we're playing Kingdoms of Amalur and I go into a zone and it just like, the troll just bashes my fucking head in and I'm just fucking dead and it's like, all right, I got to find somewhere else to be, I guess, if I want to remain alive. I don't mind that experience because that's a historically accurate experience. This guy, he goes and he just walks he rides a horse on this road that turns into a footpath, that turns into a forest that nobody has ever been in. As far as he's aware, he's never heard of it. And he meets a guy who's got these two sex boys that are just indescribable. And he takes him into this castle that has a fucking waterfall falling off the back of it. Right? And he tells him, well, I could challenge you to a fight, but you would die. So I'll send you on a quest to test whether you could beat me. And the implication here is either that the guy who whooped him, the knight in black who whooped him, is the guy at Waterfall Castle, or the guy at Waterfall Castle has beaten that guy before. And so our knight is like, yeah, I'm one of King Arthur's knights. I'm a total badass, but there are way badder asses out there in the universe than me. Because Kai has demanded a story of a badass. And so he's like, well, you guys know my exploits. I could sit up here and we could do one of my songs and we could circle jerk and you guys know me. But if I'm going to play Bard tonight, let me tell you this fucking crazy thing that happened to me. And then the story continues. Our speaker says, now of a truth, Kai. Honestly, Kai. No, I'm telling you the truth now, Kai. This is the truth. Kai, this is the truth. No man ever before confessed to an adventure so much to his own discredit. Right? Truly, tell me true. No man has ever confessed at an honor circle jerk to something so dishonorable. Right? You got to remember, discredit here. Not his debt, right? How much he can spend of their money. if he's going out adventuring, right? Hey, I need a new sword. Can I borrow $50? They're like, man, you're just going to get beat by that guy again. No, you cannot buy $5 or borrow $5. His discredit, right? Of a truth, Kai, no man has ever before confessed to an adventure so much to his own discredit. No man has ever so humbly stood in front of a court and told a story. No man has ever lost so bad at a fight than I did that day, Kai. Straight up. And verily it seems strange to me that neither before nor since have I heard of any person besides myself who knew of this adventure. I've asked around, dude. Nobody's met this guy. Nobody else has done this thing that I did. And that the subject of it should exist within King Arthur's dominions without any other person lighting upon it. Now this is the call to action. He's just challenged Kai. And if you know who Kai is, because you're a Briton in the 13th century or the 9th century, you know who Arthur is. You know who Arthur is. You know who Kai is, right? You've watched The Sword and the Stone, that Disney movie. You know who Kai is, right? Kai is either Arthur's cousin or his uncle, but most importantly, Kai is the Chamberlain. Kai is the highest ranking knight in Arthur's pyramid of knights. When Arthur says, all right, I'm taking a nap, the person in charge, right? Did we all have big families? Did we all have big families? I grew up in a big family. When mom would say, all right, I'm taking a nap, you're in charge, it was the Chamberlain, the Castellan, right? Who's in charge. Man of the house used to mean something. Dad's out of the house, mom's taking a nap, you're in charge. Anything that goes wrong, your fault. And that used to matter. Well, Arthur is asleep. Kai's in charge. And Kai says, well, I'm in charge. Tell me a story. And our friend here goes, well, I got a story. But that story is a challenge to Kai. It's an outright challenge of Kai's masculinity. It's a challenge of Kai's authority to be Castellan. Because if our speaker, whose name I cannot pronounce and can't remember, frankly, it's not on the screen, Kanan. If Kanan can't do it, right? If Kanan, if he can't do it, well, why is Kai better than me? Is what he's asking. Kanan's going, well, wait a minute. None of you have ever been here. I failed. Why are you higher than me in rank, in both honor and Arthur's court? And so the story continues. Now, quoth Owen, the youngest of those present, would it not be well to go and endeavor to discover that place? By the hand of my friend, says Kai, often dost thou utter that with thy tongue, which thou wouldst not make good with thy deeds. And so what Kai is saying to Kanan and Owen is, you guys also often talk big. You talk big. You talk a big game. You talk it, but often you don't follow through. And Guinevere, Queen Guinevere, says, in very truth, it were better thou wert hanged, Kai, than to use such uncourteous speech toward a man like Owen. At this time, the queen's responsibility, they said it early in this, but the queen's responsibility is to pass out sexual favors and compliments to the males in Arthur's court, so they're not jockeying for favor at all times. Because you got to think about this like a high school or even a middle school locker room, right? So they're not jockeying for horny favor all the time. The queen's responsibility is to pass out sexual favors and compliments to the men in Arthur's court, and to remind the men in Arthur's court when they're being overly aggressive for the attention of the women in the court. That's her job, and that's what she's just done. And so Kai says, "By the hand of my friend, good lady, thy praise of Owen is not greater than mine own." With that, Arthur awoke and asked if he had not been sleeping a little. And so basically, you know what dudes are like. They start to throw around insults to joke, right? Oh, I'm just fucking around. We're just fucking around. We are just fucking around, throwing around insults. And Guinevere goes, "That one insulted me." And he goes, "I'm sorry. You know that I love him more than you do. That's why I was picking on him." And then Arthur wakes up and asked if he had not been sleeping a little, meaning, had I been asleep for a while? And Owen answers, "Yes, Lord, thou hast slept a while. Is it time for us to go to meat?" "It is, Lord." And go to meat means to have another meal. Then the horn for washing was sounded, and the king and all his household sat down to eat. Yeah, they bathed before they ate. They washed their hands and their faces, their feet, their assholes, right? So they're not bringing bacteria to meat. So they're not bringing bacteria to the eating place. And when the meal was ended, Owen withdrew to his lodging and made ready his horse and arms. Owen does this. On the morrow, with the dawn of day, he put on his armor and mounted his charger and traveled through distant lands and over desert mountains. And so, if you watch my Let's Play, or you end up playing for yourself Final Fantasy VI, this is why Cayenne's character is so tragic. His son's name is Owen. Owen withdrew to his lodging and made ready his arms and horse. On the morrow, with the dawn of the day, he put on his armor and mounted his charger and traveled through distant lands and over desert mountains. And at length he arrived at the valley which Canaan had described to him, and he was certain that it was the same that he sought. And journeying along the valley by the side of the river, he followed its course till he came to the plain and within sight of the castle. When he approached the castle, he saw the youths shooting their daggers in the place where Canaan had seen them, and the yellow man to whom the castle belonged standing hard by. And no sooner had Owen saluted the yellow man than he was saluted by him in return. So he goes, "Hail, I'm Owen." And he goes, "Hail, I'm Dicknuts," whatever I named him before. And he went forward from the castle, and there he saw the chamber. And when he had entered the chamber, he beheld the maidens working at satin embroidery and chairs of gold. And their beauty and their comeliness seemed to Owen far greater than Canaan had represented to him. I just want to take a second. Like, satin is kind of a gauche material now. But if you know what satin looks like, okay, just imagine these women. And good morning, Dave. The most stunningly embroidered satin. Sure, it's all of one color. It's all yellow. And to our minds, that's so gauche, right? Everything being all one shade of color. But you got to remember, this is a world where brown is a shade of color. Like, it's different from the gray and the dark, right? And so they're in this well-lit chamber, and they're dressed in gold. And satin shimmers on its own, and it's so soft. And then they're embroidering like complex swirls and geometries all over these dresses. They look like unbelievable human porcelain dolls, art pieces, these women that he's walking in on. And they rose to await upon Owen, as they had done to Canaan, and the meal which they set before him gave more satisfaction to Owen than it had to Canaan. About the middle of the repast, the yellow man asked Owen the object of his journey, and Owen made it known to him and said, "I am in quest of the knight who guards the fountain." And so you got to understand, he just called this knight yellow. That knight, the black man, is probably just wearing all black clothing. He's probably white-skinned by our definitions. Probably looks just like everybody else, ruddy and dark-skinned, but white-ish, right? He's just wearing all black clothing because they're calling these people by the uniform color that they wear, because you could do that back then and not look like Eddie Murphy in that one stand-up act. Upon hearing that Owen wants to find the knight who guards the fountain, the yellow man smiled and said that he was as loath to point out that adventure to Owen as he had been to Canaan. However, he described the whole to Owen, and they retired to rest. The next morning, Owen found his horse made ready for him by the damsels, and he set forward and came to the glade where the black man was. And the stature of the black man seemed more wonderful to Owen than it had done to Canaan, and Owen asked him of his road, and he showed it to him. And Owen followed the road as Canaan had done till he came to the great tree, and he beheld the fountain, and the slab beside the fountain, with the bowl upon it. And Owen took the bowl, and threw a bowl full of water upon the slab, and lo, the thunder was heard, and after the thunder came the shower, much more violent than Canaan had described. And after the shower, the sky became bright. And when Owen looked at the tree, there was not one leaf upon it. And immediately the birds came and settled upon the tree and sang. And when their song was most pleasing to Owen, he beheld a knight coming towards him through the valley, and he prepared to receive him, and encountered him violently. Having broken both their lances, they drew their swords, and fought blade to blade. Then Owen struck the knight a blow through the helmet, headpiece and visor, and through the skin, and the flesh, and the bone, until it wounded the very brain. Then the Black Knight felt that he had received a mortal wound, upon which he turned his horse's head and fled. And Owen pursued him, and followed close upon him, although he was not near enough to strike him with his sword. Thereupon Owen descried a vast and resplendent castle, and they came to the castle gate, and the Black Knight was allowed to enter, and the portcullis was let fall upon Owen. And it struck his horse behind the saddle, and cut him in two, and carried away the rowels of the spurs that were upon Owen's heels. And the portcullis descended to the floor, and the rowels of the spurs, and part of the horse, here without, and Owen with the other part of the horse remained between the two gates. And the inner gate was closed, so that Owen could not go thence. And Owen was in a perplexing situation, and while he was in this state, he could see through an aperture in the gate a street facing him, with a row of houses on each side. And he beheld a maiden with yellow curling hair, and a frontlet of gold upon her head. And she was clad in a dress of yellow satin, and on her feet were shoes of variegated leather. I just want to pause here for a moment. That's one of my very favorite moments in any story, anywhere. He beats this guy and he stabs him in the fucking head, right through his visor, right? You know what those salets look like. He stabs him through the eye slit, right between the fucking eyes. Bam! Got you, motherfucker! And he turns and runs. I'm gonna get you! You know what the portcullis is, right? It's those iron bars. So if you remember Final Fantasy IX, when Steiner brings Garnet home, right, with Marcus, and they go in, and the bars go up behind them, and then right in front of them. That's what's just happened to to Owen, except it's the other way around. They came falling down, and they cut his horse in half. But he can see through the bars that there's this beautiful town, and now this beautiful woman is approaching him. And she approached the gate and desired that it should be opened. Heaven knows, lady, said Owen, it is no more possible for me to open to thee from hence than it is for thee to set me free. And what he's saying is, I can't open these bars from on the inside. What are you talking about? Truly, said the damsel, it is very sad that thou canst not be released, and every woman ought to succor thee, for I never saw one more faithful in the service of ladies than thou. As a friend thou art the most sincere, and as a lover the most devoted. Therefore, quoth she, whatever is in my power to do for thy release, I will do it. Take this ring and put it on thy finger, with the stone inside thy hand, and close thy hand upon the stone. And as long as thou concealest it, it will concealest thee. When they have consulted together, they will come forth to fetch thee, in order to put thee to death, and they will be much grieved that they cannot find thee. And I will await thee on the horse block yonder, and thou wilt be able to see me, though I cannot see thee. Therefore come and place thy hand upon my shoulder, that I may know that thou art near me. And by that way, and and by and by the way that I go hence, do thou accompany me. And so what she's saying is, I've got this magic ring. It's got a stone inlaid on it. If you turn the stone on the inside of your hand and you close your hand like this so that the stone is hidden, you will be hidden from sight. You will be invisible. And so just do that, and I'll be standing over there. And when they open the thing to figure out what the hell you've done or you've gone, you walk over here to me. But don't show yourself, because that would be fucking stupid. Just put your hand on my shoulder, and then I'll know you're there, and then you can follow me to where we're going next. It's a good plan. Then she went away from Owen, and he did all that the maiden had told him. And the people of the castle came to seek Owen, to put him to death. And when they found nothing but the half of his horse, they were sorely grieved. And Owen vanished from among them, and went to the maiden, and placed his hand upon her shoulder, whereupon she set off, and Owen followed her, until they came to the door of a large and beautiful chamber, and the maiden opened it, and they went in, and closed the door. And Owen looked around the chamber, and behold, there was not even a single nail in it that was not painted with gorgeous colors, and there was not a single panel that had not sundry images and gold portrayed upon it. And so this is where I repeat that the details of the story, like she repeated, like Lady Guest, I'm repeating Lady Guest's earlier thing that we meditated on for a while, that the story doesn't mention details that the audience doesn't need. The audience live in a world of boring grays. But this woman, she lives in a world resplendent in color, right? Color is expensive. I remember I grew up in abject poverty. I'm going to take a moment here to tell you a little story from my life to try to bring this home to you. And maybe you can think about times in your life where you just wanted to see color. More than the color that you see, more than the drab world that you live in. But I grew up in abject poverty. I can remember my grandparents, the people who lived across the road, they were older, right? They had their kids older, and their kids were older. And so mom had painted their bedroom, and the paint job that she did in the bedroom evolved with them as they grew up. And so it was just a calming scene for them to meditate on. So the older one had like the universe, so that as he's laying there at night reading his book with his little lamplight on, he's in cosmos or whatever. And then the other one, the other half of the room was like a field, like a grassy field, like a sky and flowers and whatever. And I remember being a kid and walking in that room and being like, this is heaven. This is actual heaven. But I also remember, I couldn't do the math, but I remember thinking just the time and the effort. The time and the effort alone required to paint that kind of a room is incomprehensible and requires you to be rich. It requires you to already be rich. And so you gotta put yourself, like, I'm assuming that we've all, if you've made it this long, seen a documentary, know what the inside of a medieval castle looked like. They were gray. It was stone. Tapestries are expensive, and you don't cover every square inch in color. But think about Renaissance and Enlightenment. Think about the English Enlightenment. Think about fucking Versailles, right? Every square millimeter covered in bas-relief gold. This is what these people were thinking about. They were what you do with riches. Every square inch. beautiful, mind-numbing detail. A good example, a good available, cost-effective tourist trap that I would recommend to anyone. My wife and I, the best gift we got was actually from the parents of, I have talked about you twice this week, Leanne and Dan. Your mom. I want to talk about how your mom touched my life. I think it was Leanne's mom, because Dan's family is in Chicago, I think. Leanne's mom gave us the best wedding gift. She gave me the best gift I will ever get. She knew me. She was a good gift giver, and she loved me. I know that now. I knew it at the time. I know it as I'm telling this story. The Biltmore Estate. Go to the Biltmore Estate in Asheville. That's wealth. That's being rich. On some level, that guy's smoking room is what I want with my life. Like, holy shit. It smelled like money I will never possess. Just the tobacco residue in that guy's office smelled like more money than I will ever possess. And it was awesome, breathtaking, not aspirational, not inspirational by any means, because the Biltmores did horrible things. That estate, they're not called the Biltmore. That family did horrible things to accrue that wealth. But the details, the mind-numbingly beautiful detailing is what I'm talking about. And that's what this poet, this storyteller, is telling us about. That's what he's describing, because these people didn't get to see it. The best they could get was someone describing a fictional version. He continues. The maiden kindled a fire and took water in a silver bowl and put a towel of white linen on her shoulder and gave Owen water to wash. Then she placed before him a silver table inlaid with gold, upon which was a cloth of yellow linen, and she brought him food. And of a truth, Owen had never seen any kind of meat that was not there in abundance. Yeah, Rachel's for the chat. The difference. Castles are stone and cold and creepy and eerie because they're defensive locations. Versailles is a palace. And the meat here presented is in abundance, more than he could possibly eat, more than anyone could possibly. That's what abundant is. Abundance is more than you could possibly consume, right? Like that movie where moving on. I don't remember his name, so just moving on. The dude inherits $1 million, but he has to spend some amount. He inherits an impossible amount of money, but he has to spend some impossible amount of money. It's like he's so super abundant now that he has to spend an abundance, right? And that contextualizes the superabundance. What we have here is every meat in abundance. That's superabundance. But the meat was better cooked there than he had ever found it in any other place. Nor did he ever see so excellent a display of meat and drink as there. And there was not one vessel from which he was served that was not of gold or of silver. And Owen ate and drank until late in the afternoon, when, lo, they heard a mighty clamor in the castle, and Owen asked the maiden what that outcry was. They are administering extreme unction, said she, to the nobleman who owns the castle. And Owen went to sleep. Without doing the sexy times to this lady, she says, I can see it. I know it about you, that you love women greater than any man alive. She rescues his life. She feeds him. She gives him a bed. She doesn't offer him sex. So that's not what she means. The couch which the maiden had prepared for him was meet for Arthur himself. M-E-E-T means, it means it would meet with his expectations, right? It was appropriate for Arthur himself. It was of scarlet and fur and satin and sendal and fine linen. In the middle of the night they heard a woeful cry. "What outcry again is this?" said Owen. "The nobleman who owned the castle is now dead," said the maiden. And a little after daybreak they heard an exceeding loud clamor and wailing. And Owen asked the maiden what was the cause of it. "They are bearing to the church the body of the nobleman who owned the castle." Now, I don't know how she knows these things, but we move on. And Owen rose up and clothed himself and opened a window to the chamber a window of the chamber, and looked towards the castle, and he could see neither the bounds nor the extent of the hosts that filled the street. The bounds meaning he couldn't see how far they extended, nor could he see how tightly packed they were, because the people in the street, there were so many of them. He couldn't see the bound nor the extent. He didn't know where it ended, and he couldn't see where it ended, and he couldn't see how far that might go. That's how big the city is, and that's how many people here are mourning in the streets. And they were fully armed. And a vast number of women were with them, both on horseback and on foot, and all the ecclesiastics in the city singing. And it seemed to Owen, ecclesiastics means religious types. But they use ecclesiastics because they're probably not Christians. And it seemed to Owen that the sky resounded with the vehemence of their cries, and with the noise of the trumpets, and with the singing of the ecclesiastics. In the midst of the throng he beheld the bier, on which was a veil of white linen, and wax tapers were burning beside and around it, and none that supported the bier was lower in rank than a powerful baron. Never did Owen see an assemblage so gorgeous with satin and silk and sendal. The owner of the castle would be a king. And following the train, he beheld a lady with yellow hair falling over her shoulders and stained with blood, and about her a dress of yellow satin which was torn. Upon her feet were shoes of variegated leather, and it was a marvel that the ends of her fingers were not bruised from the violence with which she smote her hands together. I think she's taking her hands and like this for some reason. That fucking hurts. I don't know why she's doing that, but that fucking hurts. Truly, she would have been the fairest lady Owen ever saw had she been in her usual guise. The blood on her hair is a detail I wasn't expecting. And her cry was louder than the shout of the men or the clamor of the trumpets. No sooner had he beheld the lady than he became inflamed with her love, so that it took entire possession of him. Then he inquired of the maiden who the lady was. "Heaven knows," replied the maiden. "She may be said to be the fairest and the most chaste, and the most liberal, and the wisest, and the most noble of women." Liberal here, the most liberal, is what your modern capital L liberals claim to be. What this means is the most free in spending her money in the local economy. "And she is my mistress. And she is called the Countess of the Fountain, the wife of whom thou didst slay yesterday." Oh, I forgot he killed that guy. I was like, how did the king die? I forgot about that. Anyway, verily, oh, my bad, says Owen, she is the woman that I love best. "Verily," said the maiden, "see, she shall also love thee not a little." Yeah, I'm assuming it's a ritual. I'm assuming it's a ritual way of showing her interior distress. That I'm in interior pain for this ritual arranged marriage. Oh, I'm so bummed out that my husband that I fucking hated is dead. I'm beating my thing. That hurts. That's kind of what I figure it is. It's a ritual self-pain thing. If your hands are all beaten and bruised, and you're not going to want to be jerking somebody off, I'm assuming. Anyway, says the maiden, verily, she shall also love thee not a little. Hurts like a motherfucker. I've got to stop doing it. And with that the maid arose, and kindled a fire, and filled a pot with water, and placed it to warm. And she brought a towel of white linen, and placed it around Owen's neck. And she took a goblet of ivory, and a silver basin, and filled them with warm water, wherewith she washed Owen's head. Then she opened a wooden casket, and drew forth a razor, whose haft was of ivory, and upon which were 2 rivets of gold. Okay, so we understand that what she's doing is she was ritually preparing him to go woo the queen of this place, because we understand the king is a ritual position of the man most able to ritually defend the most beautiful woman in town. It's a ceremony. It's a metaphor. It's a ritual that underscored government for tens of thousands of years. And I have to pee. So this is a story as old as time, right? As old as human time. This is Gilgamesh v. Enkidu. We're getting the setup, right? The poet is setting this up like a prize fight, right? Because we know the story. We know the story. We know these characters, right? We know what's going to happen. We know they're going to fight. We know that he's going to become king, right? Because he's Owen. He's Owen. He's a badass. He deserves to be a king in his own right, right? But we also know some other things, like that this is a supernatural place, and so kingship of this place is an ancienter sort of kingship, right? Arthur is king because Arthur was elected king, right? This guy's king because he married the right woman. But we know that's how Pharaoh became Pharaoh, was he married the right woman. And that's why it became ancestral, was to keep it in this one particular family line, a conquering family line. But that isn't how it was always done. And so we have Gilgamesh versus Enkidu, right? We have the setup. Except Gilgamesh is dead. So it's better if you think of it like Grey's Anatomy, right? You've got McDreamy, right? You've got Patrick Dempsey. That's the Knight in Black, right? You've got the established hottie. He got the role, right? He got the hot guy role. But it turns out we need more hot guys, because Katherine Heigl, it turns out we like to see women get run through. So Katherine Heigl and McDreamy, McDreamy, they just can't work out long term. So Patrick Dempsey's got to die, right? We got to kill Patrick Dempsey because she can't just go around getting run through, right? He's got to die. She has to have this tragic, I need a new boyfriend because my boyfriend was murdered. Well, who better than McSteamy to stab McDreamy right in the face and liberate her from her choice? That's the setup we have. And this woman, her handmaid, is working to help. This is a conspiracy against the now dead king to keep the government working. Because this handmaid, she was sent down here. This is all implicit, but she was sent down here for the queen, right? Because the queen needs the king's murderer. That's why the king shut the portcullis behind him. Because the king's fallback plan is probably for his son or his second in command, his Kai, to replace him. There's probably already... Men and women had different cultures. We had different civilizations. We had different societies. And it's been a war between men and women to control everyone, the children, since. Yeah, Owen is McSteamy. Right? Tall, dark, handsome, blue eyes. The perfect amount of beard. The exact right amount of hair, so when he pulls his helmet off, he doesn't have dumb helmet hair. That's who Owen is. Owen and Gowan are the women's favorites. That's why they're in these stories. You'd like a McSteamy shower? Heard that, Sarah. These stories existed. You'll notice that there's significantly less violence than lovemaking, because these were stories that the bards told to get laid. Okay, so she's bathed him. Do we remember Enkidu? What does the handmaiden of Ishtar, right? The goddess, the women's culture, the women's religion. What does she do to Enkidu? Yeah, she copulates with him for 7 days. But at the end of the copulation, what does she do? She bathes him, she cuts his hair, she styles his beard, and she puts him in good clothes. So what is she going to do here? She's just bathed him. She washed Owen's head. Then she opened, continuing from the text, then she opened a wooden casket and drew forth a razor, whose haft was of ivory, and upon which were 2 rivets of gold. And she shaved his beard, and she dried his head and his throat with the towel. Then she rose up from before Owen and brought him to eat. And truly Owen had never so good a meal, nor was he ever so well served. Yep. Ritually prepares him for his new life of ritual presentation. He's going to be presented to the people of this city, this castle city, right? This is a walled city. They're calling it a castle, but really it's a walled city. And so this is something I argue with historians about when I watch documentaries and stuff. I don't know any historians, but it's something that I argue with the literature that I consume all the time, that these Bronze Age hill forts weren't forts. They were walled cities like Jericho. He has not described people preparing for war. He has described people, this poet has described people in this city defending their commerce. He's described a bustling city. Not a mercantile city, exactly. Yeah, like Jerusalem, like how Jerusalem is a walled city and there are shops and stores and stuff. No, I'm not reading my own work, Sarah. I'm reading Lady Charlotte Guess's translation of the Mabinogion. This is the first story in the Mabinogion. It's a King Arthur story. It's called the Lady in the Fountain, or the Lady of the Fountain. Long live the Celts. Sure. People are gonna say dumb shit like that. But yeah. We already addressed that at the beginning. That's why we read the introduction. When he had finished his repast, his rest, his food, or his eat, rather. Repast is eating. When he had finished his repast, the maiden arranged his couch. "Come here," she said, "and sleep, and I will go and woo for thee." And Owen went to sleep, and the maiden shut the door of the chamber after her, and went toward the castle. When she came there, she found nothing but mourning and sorrow, and the countess in her chamber could not bear the sight of any one through grief. Luned came and saluted her, but the countess answered her not. And the maiden bent down toward her and said, "What aileth thee, that thou answerest no one today?" "Luned," said the countess, "what change hath befallen thee, that thou hast not come to visit me in my grief? It was wrong in thee, and I have made thee rich. It was wrong in thee that thou didst not come to see me in my distress. That was wrong in thee." You see what she's saying? She's saying, I made you rich. Why are you not worried about my emotions? And why did you not come sooner? I am paying you to be concerned about me. And it was wrong of you. And truly, says Luned, I thought thy good sense was greater than I find it to be. She said, I thought you were smarter than this. Is it well for thee to mourn after that good man, or for anything else than that thou canst not have? And so she says, is it good that you mourn for things you can't have, like a good man? The guy who just died, yeah, she guilt trips her, and then she guilt trips her right back. You didn't even fucking like that guy. He was a bad dude, is what she says. He was a bad dude. Is it really right that you mourn a bad man? Or anything else that you... And the countess says, I declare to heaven that in the whole world there is not a man equal to him. Not so, said Luned, for an ugly man would be as good as he, or better. I declare to heaven, said the countess, that were it not repugnant to me to cause to be put to death one whom I have brought up, I would have thee executed for making such a comparison to me. As it is, I will banish thee. And so what she's saying is, that you said anything about him, if you had been somebody that I hadn't brought up from poverty to riches, I would just kill you outright for saying these things about my dead husband. But as it is, you're going to banish you from my sight. And then Luned says, I am glad that thou hast no other cause to do so, than that I would have been of service to thee where thou didst not know what was to thine advantage. And henceforth evil betide whichever of us shall make the first advance towards reconciliation to the other. So what she's saying is that I'm glad that that's the choice that you made, that because of this, because of these petty things, you're going to banish me. I'm glad of that, because I've just done something that was so good for you, you have no idea. And so don't even try to reconcile with me, bitch. Evil betide us. Both of us come only to bad things for trying to fix this rift between us, says this woman. Whether I should seek an invitation from thee, or if thou of thine own accord should sent to invite me. And with that Luned went forward. And the countess arose and followed her to the door of the chamber and began coughing loudly. And when Luned looked back, the countess beckoned to her, and she returned to the countess. This was a thing that women would do. It's a thing, I'm sure those of you who grew up in girls' school have seen it. This is a thing that women would do back in the day, where they would say horrible shit. They would just project the meanest, horriblest, meanest shit. And then you'd be like, you know what, fuck you, bitch. And then you leave, and then they would start coughing like they're dying. And you turn around, oh my God, is this bitch actually dying? And then she's like, I need to be comforted. And he's like, fuck. In truth, said the countess, evil is thy disposition. But if thou knowest what is to my advantage, declare it to me. And so what she does, she goes, you hate me. But if you really know what's good for me, tell me. Sure, it's dressed up in 13th century language, but it's the same behavior. I had little sisters. You hate me. Don't hate you. I will do so, quoth Luned. Thou knowest that except by warfare and arms, it is impossible for thee to preserve thy possessions. Right? Because she owned the kingdom anyway. And then she married this guy. Now she owns everything that his family owned. Right? And so what happens, the way that it worked, is that she has to marry someone. She has no choice. She can't exert those choices in public. Not because civilization says no. Not because the law says no. Not because the women agree. And not because she likes it. Because if she does, a man will grab her by the hair and force her into marriage. And so what Luned is saying is that you know that you can't defend yourself with weapons. You know that you can't defend yourself with the money, and you know that the town will not defend you. Delay not, therefore, to seek someone who can defend them. And how can I do that? Said the countess. I will tell thee, said Luned. Unless thou canst defend the fountain, thou canst not maintain thy dominions. And no one can defend the fountain, except it be a knight of Arthur's household. By will or by force. Correct. And I will go to Arthur's court, and ill betide me if I return thence without a warrior who can guard the fountain as well as, or even better than, he who defended it formerly. So, we've already done the thought experiment. We've already asked the question, but the story is now about the question. How do you defend the silver bowl? That will be hard to perform, said the countess. Go, however, and make proof of that which thou hast promised. Luned set out, under the pretense of going to Arthur's court, but she went back to the chamber where she had left Owen, and she tarried there with him as long as it might have taken her to have traveled to the court of King Arthur. And at the end of that time, she apparelled herself and went to visit the countess. Tarried there. And the countess was much rejoiced when she saw her, and inquired what news she brought from the court. I don't know what a man and a woman are doing alone in a bedroom for 2 months, but, I bring thee the best of news, said Luned, for I have compassed the object of my mission. When wilt thou that I should present to thee the chieftain who has come with me hither? Bring him here to me to visit me tomorrow, and at midday, said the countess, and I will cause the town to be assembled by that time. And Luned returned home. And the next day at noon, Owen arrayed himself in a coat and a surcoat and a mantle of yellow satin, upon which was a broad band of gold lace, and on his feet were high shoes of variegated leather, which were fastened by golden clasps in the form of lions. And they proceeded to the chamber of the countess. Right glad was the countess of their coming, and she gazed steadfastly upon Owen and said, Luned, this knight has not the look of a traveler. What harm is there in that, lady? Said Luned. I am certain, said the countess, that no other man than this chased the soul from the body of my lord. So what she's saying is, that's not a traveler, that's the guy who killed my husband. So she's not an idiot. That's why when Luned said to her, I thought that you were more sensible than this. I expected you to react more smartly to this situation than this. It's because the countess is an intelligent and capable woman in her own right. She is not a wilting flower and a damsel in distress. Feminism is lying to you because they know you're not going to go watch. And they know that you're just going to watch Shrek and agree with what they say. Anyway. So much for the better for thee, lady, said Luned. For had he not been stronger than thy lord, he could not have deprived him of life. There is no remedy for that which is past. Be it as it may. Go back to thine abode, said the countess, and I will take counsel. The next day the countess caused all her subjects to assemble, and showed them that her earldom was left defenseless, and that it could not be protected but with horse and arms and military skill. The indication is here that it was maybe a couple of days, that they were not alone in that bedroom for months. The indication is that it was like a couple of days' ride, which is why everyone finds it so hard to believe that no one has done this yet. Right? Because if it was just you could reach it from King Arthur's palace in an afternoon, how the fuck has nobody done this? Right? But you can feel that way in video games sometimes, right? It's like, wait a minute. How have only 1% of people gotten this achievement? It's right at the beginning of the game. That kind of thing. That's why they're doing it. They're achievement grinding. You can think about this in terms of achievement grinding, what Owen is doing right now. No one has this achievement. Think of the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts and your pins or whatever, your badges. He's doing this. He's doing this not for the reward. That's why Luned has set him up as the new king. He's not here to get her. He's here to get the badge of having done this thing. Because this thing might not be in real time space the way we think of it. He might have walked into a dream. Continuing. Therefore, said the queen, this is what I offer for your choice. Either let one of you take me, or give your consent for me to take a husband from elsewhere to defend my dominions. So one of you, among my trusted advisors, the highest ranking, the most rich, the most honorable, the best fighters, you here in the city who were subjects of my husband, propose to marry me, or allow me to take a husband. Because this is how it was done. When I say that King Arthur was elected, he was. He was elected by these people. Their marriage was approved of. The previous marriage between this woman and her previous husband was approved of by these people that she's gathered. This is how it was done. The speak now or forever hold your peace is how the king in England was recently coronated. No one disagreed. And so what she's saying is, I've decided I'm going to make this choice. Speak now or forever hold your peace. That's why that's in the marriage vow, or the marriage ceremony. So they came to the determination, continues our poet, that it was better that she should have permission to marry someone from elsewhere, and thereupon she sent for the bishops and archbishops to celebrate her nuptials with Owen. And the men of the earldom did Owen homage. And Owen defended the fountain with lance and sword. And this is the manner in which he defended it. Whensoever a knight came there, he overthrew him, and sold him for his full worth. What he thus gained he divided among his barons and his knights. And no man in the world and no man in the whole world could be more beloved than he was by his subjects. And it was thus for the space of 3 years. Do be mindful of what he's doing when he says that any man who came and challenged them for the throne or for any reason, he would defeat them in single combat and then sell them and their goods and then give the money to the rich people in the town as tribute. He's selling warriors into slavery, which is kind of hilarious because we don't understand what a knight was in this context. A knight is a Viking without a ship. Okay, knight-erranthood and being a good guy knight-errant and being a bad guy knight-errant is your frame of reference. So when we talk about Vikings in the off-season, what they used to do is if you had a weapon, you could stand, you've heard this story if you're familiar with Robin Hood, Little John. You could stand on the edge of a bridge, on one end of a bridge, and you could just refuse to fucking move unless people gave you money. And so this Owen figure right now, he's kind of like a reverse Robin Hood, right? He's playing the sheriff of Nottingham right now. These criminals are coming into his lands. He's defeating them in righteous combat. and he's selling them into righteous slavery. It's righteous because he's giving the proceeds back to the city. But that did inform Southern slavery in the United States. That logic informed the Confederacy. Continuing. It befell that as Gwalchmai is also known as Gawain, Gwalchmai is my favorite, went forth one day with King Arthur, he perceived him to be very sad and sorrowful. And Gwalchmai was much grieved. Gwalchmai is also, I think Gwalchmai is also Percival. Gwalchmai is my favorite. Gwalchmai is not Percival. Gwalchmai is my favorite. Sorry. Gwalchmai was much grieved to see Arthur in this state, and he questioned him, saying, "Oh, my lord, what has befallen thee?" "In sooth, Gwalchmai," said Arthur, "I am grieved concerning Owen, whom I have lost these 3 years, and I shall certainly die if the 4th year passes without my seeing him. Now I am sure that it is through the tale which Canon the son of Clydno related that I have lost Owen." "There is no need for thee," said Gwalchmai, "to summon to arms thy whole dominions on this account, for thou thyself and the men of thy household will be able to avenge Owen, if he be slain, or to set him free, if he be in prison, and if alive, to bring him back with thee." And it was settled according to what Gwalchmai had said. Then Arthur and the men of his household prepared to go and seek Owen, and their number was 3,000, besides their attendants. And 3,000 is a lot of dudes with weapons, by the way. That's a lot of people, like in any context. Like, you think about your bar can fit like 150 people. Like, make that an order of magnitude more. Just 10 people for every one person in any bar you've ever been in. That's a lot of fucking people. And these all have weapons. And they're going to a defended, like a guarded city, like a walled city. Like, think about it. In context of the Crusades, like, think about it. 3,000 dudes with weapons show up outside Jerusalem. That's a lot of people. That's a threat. That's a threat. Okay. As we were. And Arthur came to the castle where Canon had been before. And when he came there, the youths were shooting in the same place, and the yellow man was standing hard by. When the yellow man saw Arthur, he greeted him first. Like Abram is expected to greet God first. King Arthur is the highest ranking person. When somebody shows up at your doorstep with 3,000 dudes with weapons, you respond appropriately. For the record, Abram showed up with 300 soldiers. Sorry. When the yellow man saw Arthur, he greeted him and invited him to the castle. Instantly. And Arthur accepted his invitation, and they entered the castle together. And great as was the number of his retinue, their presence was scarcely observed in the castle. So vast was its extent. And the maidens rose up to wait on them, and the service of the maidens appeared to them all to excel any attendants they had ever met with. Now remember, if you're hearing this in the 10th century or the 13th century, you've probably been a soldier in attendance on a king or on a general or a knight, and you've been to a hall, you've been to a castle, you've been attended by this, and you have felt the cramp, right, of 1,000 people in a space for 200. And this is saying that they were like stars in the night sky, so far apart that they couldn't have bumped into one another as hard as they wanted to dance. And the maidens rose up to wait on them, and the service of the maidens appeared to them all to excel any attendants they had ever met with. And even the pages who had charge of the horses were no worse served that night than Arthur himself would have been in his own place, his own palace. This place is so rich that even the page boys, the 12, 13-year-old boys whose job it is to scrub horse shit off of the bottoms of the knight's shoes, even they were treated like Arthur himself gets it home. The next morning Arthur set out thence, with Canaan for his guide, and came the poet. Remember, these are oral. The audience is beginning to mutter, how did Arthur find it so fast? Canaan's there, guys. And the poet's like, with Canaan for his guide. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, stop muttering and pay attention. We know what's coming because it's in a triplicate. So that the crowd is starting to talk, right? Starting to get cross chatter. He's starting to get distracted. We know, so we know what's coming. So yeah, and he's like, hey, Canaan, guys, pay attention. They came to the place where the black man was. And the stature of the black man was more surprising to Arthur than it had been represented to him. And they came to the top of the wooded steep, and traversed the valley till they reached the green tree, where they saw the fountain, and the bowl, and the slab. And upon that Kai came to Arthur and spoke to him. My lord, said he, I know the meaning of all this, and my request is that thou wilt permit me to throw the water on the slab, and to receive the first adventure that may befall. And Arthur gave him leave. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. The poet has done such a good job here. It would be unbelievable if Kai didn't step in and do this for Arthur. Because Canaan brought them here, Owen has evidently succeeded, and Kai is the person most in Arthur's credit. Kai has this job, not because Kai is suited to it, not because Kai is good at it. He's been bad at it by not being the first to go. He's been bad at it by demanding a story. He's been bad at it by mouthing off in front of Guinevere to Owen, right? He's been bad at his job consistently. He has to do this, or the whole civilization might crumble. And Arthur gave him leave. Then Kai threw a bowl full of water upon the slab, and immediately there came the thunder, and after the thunder the shower, and such a thunderstorm that they had never known before, and many of the attendants who were in Arthur's train were killed by the shower. After the shower had ceased, the sky became clear, and on looking at the tree they beheld it completely lifeless. You got to think, if 1% of them died, that's still 30 men. Sorry, leafless, not lifeless. Then the birds descended upon the tree, and the song of the birds was far sweeter than any strain they had ever heard before. Then they beheld a knight on a coal-black horse, clothed in black satin, coming rapidly toward them. And Kai met him and encountered him, and it was not long before Kai was overthrown. And the knight withdrew, and Arthur and his host encamped for the night. And when they arose in the morning, they perceived the signal of combat upon the lance of the knight. And Kai came to Arthur and spoke to him. My lord, said he, though I was overthrown yesterday, if it seem good to thee, I would gladly meet the knight again today. Thou mayst do so, said Arthur. And Kai went toward the knight, and on the spot he overthrew Kai, and struck him with the head of his lance in the forehead, so that it broke his helmet and the headpiece, and pierced the skin and the flesh, the breadth of the spearhead, even to the bone. And Kai returned to his companions. After this, all the household of Arthur went forth, one after the other, to combat the knight. What he's saying when he says even to the bone, this is pretty thin skin, right? And what he's saying is that you could see the bone, like that it didn't just graze it. It wasn't just like I could do with my fingernail, right? It didn't just make him bleed. It split the skin. He's going to have a permanent scar. After this, all the household of Arthur went forth, one after the other, to combat the knight, until there was not one that was not overthrown by him, except Arthur and Gwalchmai. And Arthur armed himself to encounter the knight. O my lord, said Gwalchmai, permit me to fight with him first. And Arthur permitted him. You got to imagine that Arthur's going to put his gloves on, or like buckle his shoes. Every time Arthur goes to buckle his shoes to be the first one to do it, one of these guys steps up. And Gwalchmai has waited till last, to let everybody have their moment, right? Gwalchmai's the best. Gwalchmai's the best. And so he's going to let everybody go. He's going to let everybody have their turn, because everybody needs to prove themselves to Gwalchmai. Everybody, even Owen. And Arthur permitted him. And he went forth to meet the king, having over himself and his horse a satin robe of honor, which had been sent him by the daughter of the Earl of Angui. And in this dress he was not known by any of the host. So just remember that. Her dress. He has, as the, you know how they put the drape over the saddle for these horses so that it looks cool? Like, have you ever seen like a tourney at like the Renaissance fair? They have these blankets, like saddle blankets. It comes from the saddle blanket tradition, but it's basically a saddle blanket of satin. But his isn't just a saddle blanket of satin. It's a noble woman's dress. This is a badass. This dude. She gifted him the dress on her body. And nobody recognized him. And they charged each other and fought all that day until the evening. This is how he's explaining that this is how Gwalchmai got to the end, because everybody would have deferred to Gwalchmai first. Everybody. His fame preceded him. Even Kai would have been like, you first. I won't take this challenge from you. That'd be like if Tom Brady showed up for like a throwing competition, right? It's like you let Tom go first. And so what Tom has done in this case is Tom Brady has showed up in Groucho Marx in a Groucho Marx glasses, nose, mustache, and he's got I don't know, what's President Trump's wife's name? He's got her fucking lingerie over his shoulder. And they charged each other and fought all that day until the evening. And neither of them was able to unhorse the other. Owen and Gowan, baby. Sorry, Owen and Gwalchmai. The next day they fought with strong lances, and neither of them could obtain the mastery. And the third day they fought with exceeding strong lances, and they were incensed with rage, and fought furiously, even until noon. And they gave each other such a shock that the girths of their horses were broken. The girths is the saddle, the strap that goes around the belly that holds the saddle down. They hit one another so fucking hard that they popped that. That would be like two NFL players hitting one another so fucking hard they broke the shoulder straps. I've done that, by the way. You don't have to believe it, but I've done that. It's possible, is all I'm saying. So that they fell over their horses' cruppers to the ground. It's actually a funny image if you imagine it. That what it looks like, right? Jousting. You know what it looks like. They've got their lance right up under their arm, and they're going to point it at one another, and they're going to hit each other. They're not trying to hit each other's shields, right? That's how the one got hit in the face, and it cut him all the way to the bone. He didn't stand over him and poof him with it. No, he hit him in the fucking head. He missed it with his shield and pow, right in the fucking face, right? So that's what they're doing at one another. And they hit one another so perfectly, hit the shield so perfectly that the horses didn't keep running out from under them. They hit one another so perfectly, their lances didn't break, the fucking saddles broke, and they went off the side of the horses. It's actually a funny image. It's a comical image. That's how they unhorsed one another. They hit one another so hard that the saddles fell off. They fell over their cruppers to the ground, and they rose up speedily and drew their swords and resumed the combat. And the multitude that witnessed their encounter felt assured that they had never before seen two men so valiant or so powerful. And had it been midnight, it would have been light from the fire that flashed from their weapons. And the knight gave Gwalchmai a blow that turned his helmet from off his face, so that the knight knew that it was Gwalchmai. Then Owen said, "My lord Gwalchmai, I did not know thee for my cousin. Owing to the robe of honor that enveloped thee, take my sword and my arms." The robe of honor. He's literally wearing a woman's dress around his armor, guys. I didn't recognize you because you're dressed like a woman. He's not wearing a tabard. He's wearing a dress. I didn't recognize you because you're wearing a dress. Please, take my sword in my arms. Take my sword and my shield, said Gwalkmai, thou, and probably my gauntlets, and take the things that I need to actually do combat. It's a ritual that they did. And then said Gwalkmai, thou, Owen, art the victor. Take thou my sword. And with that Arthur saw that they were conversing and advanced towards them. My lord Arthur, said Gwalkmai, here is Owen, who has vanquished me, and will not take my arms. My lord, said Owen, it is he that has vanquished me, and he will not take my sword. This is what kings were for. This is the first story, The Lady of the Fountain from the Mabinogion. It's in the title. You could have done the work. My lord, said Owen, it is he who has vanquished me, and he will not take my sword. Give me your swords, said Arthur. Think in terms of Solomon with those two women. This is what kings were for. I was talking in a video that I did earlier today about judgment, judges, accurately judging. Give me your swords, said Arthur, and then neither of you has vanquished the other. This is why soccer is so content to have 0-0 scores, by the way. You could have a 0-0 joust. Then Owen put his arms around Arthur's neck, and they embraced. And all the host hurried forward to see Owen and to embrace him. And there was nigh being a loss of life, so great was the press. They hugged each other so tight that they almost suffocated one another in this giant, 2,900 man group hug. And they retired that night, and the next day Arthur prepared to depart. My lord, said Owen, this is not well for thee. For I have been absent from thee these 3 years, and during all that time, these 3 years, and during all that time, up to this very day, I have been preparing a banquet for thee, knowing that thou wouldst come to seek me. Tarry with me, therefore, until thou and thy attendants have recovered the fatigues of the journey and have been anointed. And they all proceeded to the castle of the Countess of the Fountain, and the banquet which had been 3 years preparing was consumed in 3 months. Never had they a more delicious or agreeable banquet, and Arthur prepared to depart. Then he sent an embassy to the Countess to beseech her to permit Owen to go with him for the space of 3 months, that he might show him to the nobles and the fair dames of the island of Britain. And the Countess gave her consent, although it was very painful to her. So Owen came with Arthur to the island of Britain, and when he was once more amongst his kindred and friends, he remained 3 years, instead of 3 months, with them. And as Owen one day sat at meat in the city of Caerleon upon Usk, behold, a damsel entered upon a bay horse. Caerleon, by the way, is, if I'm not wrong, Caerleon is on the western coast of Wales. I'm probably wrong about that, actually, now that I think about it. Caerleon is probably on the southern coast of Cornwall. With a curling mane, this dun horse, and covered with foam, and the bridle, and so much as was seen of the saddle, were of gold. I don't know what the foam that it's talking about is. Sea foam, maybe? I don't know. And the damsel was arrayed in a dress of yellow satin. And she came up to Owen, and took the ring from off his hand. Thus, remember, said she, shall be treated the deceiver, the traitor, the faithless, the disgraced, and the beardless. And she turned her horse's head and departed. Then his adventure came to Owen's remembrance, and he was sorrowful. And having finished eating, he went to his own abode and made preparations that night. And the next day he arose, but did not go to the court, but wandered to the distant parts of the earth and to uncultivated mountains. And he remained there until all his apparel was worn out, and his body was wasted away, and his hair was grown long. And he went about with the wild beasts, and fed with them, until they became familiar with him. But at length he grew so weak that he could no longer bear them company. Then he descended from the mountains to the valley and came to a park that was the fairest in the world. and belonged to a widowed countess. One day the countess and her maidens went forth to a walk by a lake that was in the middle of the park, and they saw the form of a man, and they were terrified. Nevertheless, they went near him and touched him and looked at him, and they saw that there was life in him, though he was exhausted by the heat of the sun. And the countess returned to the castle and took a flask full of precious ointment and gave it to one of her maidens. "Go with this," she said, "and take with thee yonder horse and clothing and place them near the man we just saw, and anoint him with this balsam near his heart." Balsam. It's important that you know this. Balsam oil is also called chrism. And if there is life in him, he will arise through the efficacy of this balsam. Then watch what he will do. And chrism is what they anointed those known as Christos. And the maiden departed from her and poured the whole of the balsam upon Owen, Jesus, and left the horse and the garments hard by, and went a little way off, and hid herself to watch him. Okay, have you ever dealt with an essential oil before? She's given this bottle. Now I'm imagining a bottle. It could still be like a little vial, but he said bottle. So I'm thinking of a bottle, like 8 ounces. Have you ever, could you imagine dumping 8 ounces of essential oil on yourself? That's what she just did to this dude. Anyway, she poured the whole of the balsam upon Owen. She said, "Anoint him on his breast." That means like dab a finger in it. That'll do. And left the horse and the garments hard by, and went a little way off, and hid herself to watch him. In a short time she saw him begin to move his arms, and he rose up, and looked at his person, and became ashamed of the unseemliness of his appearance. Then he perceived the horse and the garments that were near him, and he crept forward till he was able to draw the garments to him from off the saddle, and he clothed himself, and with difficulty mounted the horse. Then the damsel discovered herself to him, uncovered, showed herself to him, and saluted him. And he was rejoiced when he saw her, and inquired of her what land and what territory that was. "Truly," said the maiden, "a widowed countess owns yonder castle. At the death of her husband, he left her 2 earldoms, but at this day she has but this one dwelling that has not been wrested from her by a young earl, who is her neighbor, because she refused to become his wife." So you understand, the things that a man earns in his life, he gives to his wife, to give to his children. If he didn't give her children, she is at risk. "That is a pity," said Owen. And when he and the maiden proceeded to the castle, and he alighted there, and the maiden conducted him to a pleasant chamber, and kindled a fire left for him. And the maiden came to the countess, and gave the flask into her hand. "Ha, maiden," said the countess, "where is all the balsam?" "Have I not used it all?" said she. "Oh, maiden," said the countess, "I cannot easily forgive thee this. It is sad for me to have wasted 70 pounds. I don't remember, what's a score, 20? 70 pounds. So that's 140 pounds of gold worth of precious ointment upon a stranger whom I do not know. However, maiden, wait thou upon him until he is quite recovered." And the maiden did so, and furnished him with meat and drink, and fire and lodging, and medicaments, until he was well again. Medicaments are medicines, but medicines to them mean drugs, to us. Medicaments to them mean poultices, salves, to us. And in 3 months he was restored to his former guise, and became even more comely than he had ever been before. So Owen is still a young man, and he might have wandered into another dream, because I didn't visit it because it's so sad, but he forgot about that 3 years that he spent there. It was 3 real years. But he forgot it when he wasn't there, because it wasn't a real place. He was really gone from time, but he wasn't really in a real place. The real place was the altar with the silver bowl and chain. You create a, like, think about Final Fantasy VIII. Like, there's this bubble shimmer reality, or Final Fantasy IX, the Mage Village. There's this bubble or shimmer, right, that happens. That creates a door between the two places when you use the water on the thing. And that's why you have to get back fast, right? He didn't have to get back fast, the original king that Owen slew, because he was going to die anyway, because he was dying. He had to get back fast because the gate would close with him on the other side, and she's at risk, his wife. If he doesn't come back and he can't get back, Owen, his slayer, can't get back there to fix what's going on, to keep that bubble reality a bubble reality. You see? It becomes an existential threat for these people if he doesn't get back there to let them know that he's died. And if Owen doesn't chase him back, if Owen waits just a little bit longer, that portcullis closes and there's nothing there on the other side. You can't see it looking in. The poet doesn't need to describe this. This is a motif that's thousands of years old. The shimmer reality. We have to put it in the kind of ways that we do, because we understand fiction. And we teach kids, no, that's not real. But adult people were looking for shimmery bubble realities still. Adult people are still looking for these dream places. But these dream places, Owen might actually have just been in a catatonic meditative state. He might have just been that black guy. He might have just stayed there in a catatonic meditative state, intermittently putting on that armor and fighting people who showed up at that place. From his perspective, the passage of time may have been catatonia. He may have had no awareness of time's passage, but it was passing outside him. The psychological state that is happening to these characters isn't one that you're going to find people talking about in literature. But they understood it because they don't have to describe the psychological state the way I have to. Continuing. And the maiden did as she was told, furnishing Owen with meat and drink and fire and lodging and medicaments. We've been through that. One day Owen heard a great tumult and a sound of arms in the castle, and he inquired of the maiden the cause thereof. The earl, said she, whom I mentioned to thee, had come before the castle with a numerous army to subdue the countess. And that's what I was getting back to. He's not an old man, and they've brought his body magically back to youthful vigor. And Owen inquired of her whether the countess had a horse and arms and her possession. She has the best in the world, said the maiden. Wilt thou go and request the loan of a horse and arms for me? Wilt thou go and request the loan of a horse and arms for me, said Owen, that I may go and look at this army? I will, said the maiden. And she came to the countess and told her what Owen had said. And the countess laughed. Truly, said she, I will even give him a horse and arms forever. Such a horse and such arms had he never yet, and I am glad that they should be taken by him today, lest my enemies should have them against my will tomorrow. Yet I know not what he would do with them. Before about the 15th century, farming and horse husbandry, horse farming, these things were women's work. Growing food, raising the horses, training them for war. This was women's work. You like the girls that you see in the tight pants and the black jackets with the helmets that do the... Yeah, they've been doing that for 7,000 years. It was women's work. Maintaining, and that's why these guys let the horses die so often. They have no relationship to this horse. None whatsoever. When she talks about these stories don't teach you the ways of chivalry, I'll read for you Percival someday. Percival learns how to ride a horse at all by meeting a magic woman who rides horses like she was born on one. This is a skill set that women had and maintained. They shared it with men for the purpose of not dying. Because you put a guy on a horse, and suddenly he's very lethal. But women kept the technology. That's what he's saying. Do you have a horse? And she's saying, oh, I got the best horses in the world. Don't you worry about that. And then she says, if he'll protect me now, he can have all the horses he wants forever. If all he wants is a horse. Truly, I will even give him a horse and arms forever. The gift of arms, the armor, the weapon, the shield, the armor that you were wearing, that was a gift from a woman for thousands of years. That's why it didn't go into your grave. That might be why it did in the cases it did. It was the gift from the woman that you love the most. It was the gift from your woman that you're going to die in combat to prevent another man from stealing for sex purposes. This is a very real thing. This isn't just, fantasy TV show, Highlander, what's that fucking show about the bitch that goes back in time and falls in love with the Scottish guy. It's not that at all. I'll give him a horse and arms forever. Such a horse and such arms had he never yet. And I'm glad that they should be taken by him today, lest my enemy should have them against my will tomorrow. Yet I know not what he would do with them. I don't know if he can fight. The countess bade them bring out a beautiful black steed, upon which was a beechen saddle. And can I just, again, point out that the female characters are the characters that the author doesn't have to explain, but that the author is putting dialogue. He's putting dialogue between two female characters, female character to female character. Even Star Wars doesn't get that right. So these feminists got their ideas about what men should be like and what civilization should be like from bad faith readings of these stories. Christine de Pizan read these stories and read philosophy and went, wait a minute, philosophy's fucking lying about what women are like, because the poets seem to have a pretty good relationship with us. The countess bade them bring out a beautiful black steed, upon which was a beechen saddle and a suit of armor for man and horse. And Owen armed himself and mounted the horse and went forth, attended by 2 pages completely equipped with horses and arms. And when they came near to the earl's army, they could see neither its extent nor its extremity. And Owen asked the pages in which troop the earl was. In yonder troop, said they, in which are 4 yellow standards. 2 of them are before and 2 behind him. Now, said Owen, do you return and await me near the portal of the castle? So they returned. And Owen pressed forward until he met the earl. And Owen drew him completely out of his saddle, and turned his horse's head towards the castle. And though it was with difficulty, he brought the earl to the portal, where the pages awaited him. And in they came. And Owen presented the earl as a gift to the countess, and said to her, behold, a requital to thee for thy blessed balsam. The army encamped around the castle, and the earl restored to the countess the 2 earldoms he had taken from her, as a ransom for his life. And for his freedom he gave her the half of his own dominions, and all his gold, and his silver, and his jewels, besides other hostages. You want to talk about righteousness in an unrighteous world? A man with a sword willing to do the right thing is the most powerful force in any economy. And Owen took his departure. And the countess and all her subjects besought him to remain, but Owen chose rather to wander through distant lands and deserts, because he's a knight errant. And as he journeyed, he heard a loud yelling in a wood, and it was repeated a second and a third time, and Owen went towards the spot and beheld a huge craggy mound in the middle of the wood, on the side of which was a grey rock, and there was a cleft in the rock, and a serpent was within the cleft. And near the rock stood a black lion, and every time the lion sought to go thence, the serpent darted toward him to attack him. And Owen unsheathed his sword, and drew near to the rock, and as the serpent sprang out, he struck him with his sword and cut him in two. And he dried his sword and went on his way as before. But behold, the lion followed him, and played about him, as though it had been a greyhound that he had reared. And there are paintings of this moment that are really cool. They proceeded thus throughout the day until the evening, and when it was time for Owen to take his rest, he dismounted and turned his horse loose in a flat and wooded meadow, and he struck fire. And when the fire was kindled, the lion brought him fuel enough to last for 3 nights, and the lion disappeared. And presently the lion returned, bearing a fine large roebuck, deer, and he threw it down before Owen, who went towards the fire with it. And Owen took the roebuck and skinned it, and placed collops of its flesh upon skewers and around the fire. The rest of the buck he gave to the lion to devour. While he was doing this, he heard a deep sigh near him, and a second, and a third. And Owen called out to know whether the sigh he heard proceeded from a mortal, and he received answer that it did. Like, if I were making the movie of this moment, we would really just, we would sit on this for a minute. Owen's got a fucking lion for a pet that dances around him like a greyhound, that brings him deer to eat, but it's still dark on a hill, really a mound, in the middle of fucking nowhere in the British Isles. And he hears in the distance, and he's like, that might have been the wind. And then he hears, he's like, hope that wasn't a ghost. And then he hears a third one. Like, it becomes like an exasperated stage sigh by the third one. And he's like, okay, are you a ghost or what? Hark, be ye immortal? It's fucking funny to me. Because he can't be scared, right? He just needs to know if it's a ghost or a god. I think that's funny. And he received answer that it did belong to a mortal. Who art thou? Said Owen. Truly. I don't know if this is... Okay, I do know who this is. Truly, said a voice. I am Luned, the handmaiden of the Countess of the Fountain. And what dost thou here? Said Owen. I am imprisoned, said she, on account of the knight who came from Arthur's court and married the Countess. And he stayed a short time with her, but he afterwards departed for the court of Arthur, and has not returned since. And he was the friend I loved best in the world. And 2 of the pages in the Countess's chamber traduced him, and called him a deceiver. And I told them that they too were not a match for him alone. So they imprisoned me in the stone vault, and said that I should be put to death, unless he came to deliver me, by a certain day. And that is no further off than the day after tomorrow. And I have no one to send to seek after him. And his name is Owen, the son of Urien. And art thou certain that if that knight knew all this, he would come to rescue thee? I am certain of it, said she. When the collops were cooked, Owen divided them into 2 parts, between himself and the maiden. And after they had eaten, they talked together until the day dawned. And the next morning Owen inquired of the damsel if there was any place where he could get food and entertainment for that night. There is, lord, said she. Cross over yonder and go along the side of the river, and in a short time thou wilt see a great castle, in which are many towers, and the earl who owns that castle is the most hospitable man in the world. There thou mayst spend the night. Never did sentinel keep stricter watch over his lord than the lion that night over Owen. And Owen accoutred his horse, and passed across by the ford, and came in sight of the castle. And he entered it, and was honorably received. And his horse was well cared for, and plenty of fodder was placed before him. Then the lion went and lay down in the horse's manger, so that none of the people of the castle dared to approach him. The treatment which Owen met with there was such as he had never known elsewhere, for every one was as sorrowful as though death had been put upon him. And they went to meat. That's meat, that's to meal. And the earl sat upon one side of Owen, and on the other side his only daughter. And Owen had never seen any more lovely than she, that he could remember. Then the lion came and placed himself between Owen's feet, and he fed him with every kind of food that he took himself. And he never saw anything equal to the sadness of the people. In the middle of the repast, the earl began to bid Owen welcome. Then said Owen, oh, give me a second, I actually gotta plug in my laptop. This is run long. I sure do know how to shaggy a story. I love this story. I've loved this story for years. For years and years. I loved this story when I was just a little baby boy. 9, 10 years old, whatever. In the middle of the repast, the earl began to bid Owen welcome. Then said Owen, Behold, it is time for thee to be cheerful. Heaven knows, said the earl, that it is not thy coming that makes us sorrowful, but we have cause enough for sadness and care. What is that? Said Owen. I have 2 sons, replied the earl, and yesterday they went to the mountains to hunt. Now there is on the mountain a monster who kills men and devours them, and he seized my sons, and tomorrow is the time he is fixed to be here, and he threatens that he will then slay my sons before my eyes, unless I will deliver into his hands this, my daughter. He has the form of a man, but in stature he is no less than a giant. Truly, said Owen, that is lamentable. And which wilt thou do? Heaven knows, says the earl. It will be better that my son should be slain against my will than that I should voluntarily give up my daughter to him to ill-treat and destroy. Then they talked about other things, and Owen stayed there that night. The next morning they heard an exceeding great clamor, which was caused by the coming of the giant with the 2 youths. And the earl was anxious both to protect his castle and to release his 2 sons. Then Owen put on his armor and went forth to encounter the giant, and the lion followed him. And when the giant saw that Owen was armed, he rushed towards him and attacked him. And the lion fought with the giant much more fiercely than Owen did. Truly, said the giant, I should find no difficulty in fighting with thee, were it not for the animal that is with thee. Upon that, Owen took the lion back to the castle and shut the gate upon him. And then he returned to fight the giant as before, and the lion roared very loud, for he heard that it went hard with Owen. And he climbed up till he reached the top of the earl's hall, and thence he got to the top of the castle, and he sprang down from the walls, and went and joined Owen. And the lion gave the giant a stroke with his paw, which tore him from his shoulder to his hip, and his heart was laid bare, and the giant fell down dead. Then Owen restored the 2 youths to their father. The earl besought Owen to remain with him, and he would not, but set forward towards the meadow where Luned was. And when he came there, he saw a great fire kindled, and 2 youths with beautiful curling auburn hair were leading the maiden to cast her into the fire. And Owen asked them what charge they had against her. And they told him of the compact that was between them, as the maiden had done the night before. And, said they, Owen has failed her. Therefore we are taking her to be burnt. Truly, said Owen, he is a good knight, and if he knew that the maiden was in such peril, I marvel that he came not to her rescue. But if you will accept me in his stead, I will do battle with you. We will, said the youths, by him who made us. And they attacked Owen, and he was hard beset by them. And with that the lion came to Owen's assistance, and they too got the better of the young men. And they said to him, Chieftain, it was not agreed that we should fight save with thyself alone, and it is harder for us to contend with yonder animal than with thee. And Owen put the lion in the place where the maiden had been imprisoned, and blocked up the door with stones. And he went to fight with the young men as before. But Owen had not his usual strength, and the two youths pressed hard upon him. And the lion roared incessantly at seeing Owen in trouble, and he burst through the wall until he found a way out, and rushed upon the young men, and instantly slew them. So Luned was saved from being burned. Then Owen returned with Luned to the dominions of the Countess of the Fountain. And when he went thence, he took the Countess with him to Arthur's court, and she was his wife as long as she lived. And then he took the road that led to the court of the savage black man, and Owen fought with him. And the lion did not quit Owen until he had vanquished him. And when he reached the court of the savage black man, he entered the hall, and beheld 24 ladies, the fairest that could be seen. And the garments which they had on were not worth 24 pence, and they were as sorrowful as death. And Owen asked them the cause of their sadness. And they said, We are the daughters of earls, and we all came here with our husbands, whom we dearly loved. And we were received with honor and rejoicing, and we were thrown into a state of stupor. And while we were thus, the demon who owns this castle slew all our husbands, and took from us our horses, and our raiment, and our gold, and our silver, and the corpses of our husbands are still in this house, and many others with them. And this, chieftain, is the cause of our grief. And we are sorry that thou art come hither, lest harm should befall thee. It's important also that you know that women in the ancient world, women in the modern world, and many places in the world, were required by law, by practice, by their own ability to get into the afterlife, to properly bury their husbands, to see their husbands die, and properly bury them. Still a practice in India for women to throw themselves on their husband's funeral fire. And Owen was grieved when he heard this. And he went forth from the castle, and he beheld a knight approaching him, who saluted him in a friendly and cheerful manner, as if he had been a brother. And this was the savage black man. And very sooth, says Owen, it is not to seek thy friendship that I am here. In sooth, said he, thou shalt not find it then. And with that they charged each other, and fought furiously. And Owen overcame him, and bound his hands behind his back. Then the black savage besought Owen to spare his life, and spoke thus, My lord Owen, said he, it was foretold that thou shouldst come hither and vanquish me, and thou hast done so. I was a robber here, and my house was a house of spoil. But grant me my life, and I will become the keeper of an hospice, and I will maintain this house as an hospice for weak and for strong, as long as I live, for the good of thy soul. And Owen accepted this proposal of him, and remained there that night. Yeah, an hospice and a hospital are the same thing. And what a hospice is actually supposed to do is give fucking hospitality. It's supposed to be a place where you can stop to eat. It's supposed to be a place where you can stop to drink, a place where you can stop to rest. You can get fucking laid. It's a hospital. Our medical industry uses its very own words to damn itself. And the next day he took the 24 ladies and their horses. 24 is 24. And their raiment, and what they possessed of goods and jewels, and proceeded with them to Arthur's court. And if Arthur was rejoiced when he saw him, after he had lost him the first time, his joy was now much greater. And of those ladies, such as wished to remain in Arthur's court remained there, and such as wished to depart, departed. But do be mindful that this guy didn't do hospice for strangers because he wanted to. What he wanted to do was steal from strangers. And thenceforth Owen dwelt at Arthur's court greatly beloved, as the head of his household, until he went away with his followers. And those were the army of 300 ravens, which Ken Verkin had left him. And wherever Owen went with these, he was victorious. That is obviously a story that our author didn't append for that story. That story that we just watched was obviously several other poet cycles, right? It was obviously a collection of things that Owen has done in his life. And Rachel, this is for you. This is for you. It is legitimately, this part I'm about to say, not the whole reading. This part I'm about to say for you. It is a legitimate mystery. It is a legitimate argument today in Arthur scholarship. And I'm going to tell you that it's a stupid fucking argument, but it is a legitimate argument why the final movement of this piece has Owen coming up across Luneth, or whatever her name is. Luned. Why does he come across Luned? Why does he rescue Luned? Why doesn't he tell Luned who he is? This is a genuine mystery among Arthur scholars today, and it's a stupid fucking mystery. It's a stupid fucking mystery. He comes across her because she's the only other loose narrative thread, and if you're braiding, which was their art, if you're braiding, if you're embroidering sequins, if you're embroidering satin, which is what a book is, it's what a story is, you can't leave any loose threads. Lunette was banished and accepted her banishment. Owen is the world's greatest lover of women. He doesn't know she's been banished. So his entire quest is a quest of serendipity toward arriving at the woman that he loves the most, Luned, and his future, the woman who will give him a child. This other woman was a supernatural queen. She can't give him a child or a future. But Luned can, because Luned was lifted up from nothing and righteous enough to walk away from it when she was wronged. Fuck you, modern scholarship. Owen and Luned are righteous and for one another. Luned identifies him and rescues him, not for herself, for her lady, and she faces the ultimate punishment for it. She is blamed for everything that goes wrong after. She's blamed for the conspiracy against Owen, and it was serendipity. I quit reading the Prince's Serendip, because serendipity, I realized, is all of it. All of the Celtic. What they're missing is they think that the serendipity started. They think that these serendipitous woven narratives began at that story, and they're fucking wrong, Rachel. They're fucking wrong. The Indo-European mythic cycle is serendipity. When I talk to you about God has a plan, good things will happen to me if God wants them to happen to me, I'm talking about serendipity. I live my life with a conscious effort towards serendipity. The people who show up in my life and remain, you, Rachel, these other 18 that have liked and remained tangentially, it's all serendipitous. I live like a knight errant. I live like Gowan, like Gwalchmai. And the reason that I'm here on YouTube is because I gave every single one of you 8 billion motherfuckers an opportunity to stand up and fight for King Arthur, but I'm gonna fucking do it. Now it's my fucking time, and I'm gonna make it look fucking easy. Thank you for being here. I love you guys, but I'm hot, and I'm hungry, and I'm uncomfortable, and I'm a little agitated, and I'm super fucking horny now. So I'm gonna do something else.